And we are live. There we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another impromptu tech Poutine. I'd swear we'll never have a schedule for these and give everyone 10 minutes notice. But thank you all for getting in early. We should now have proper audio and video. Come on, George. Tell us what breakfast you had this morning.
Yes.
Yep.
Fuck off.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we're demonetized. There we go. Swearing in the first 30 seconds gets you demonetized.
Were we ever monetized? To be fair.
Yes. Yes, we were.
Oh, well,
we get,
sorry. Oops.
It's aside from super chats, I think we get the best part of $6 for 3 hour stream. Very worth it. Make more money on consultancy calls. So yeah, we haven't started the show yet. As always, we'll let a few people roll in. I noticed the moment George swore we went down 20 viewers, but hey, it is what it is. I'm speaking to you live from Berlin, which is in Germany, because this week is the IFA trade show. It's more of a public, it's public first. It's not trade first. It's a hell of a show. As in, the first time you come here, it's hell. But I'm here not for hell. I am here for a mixture of Intel and Qualcomm news, and I actually fly home before the show starts. So, but we are back from hot chips. Yeah. How it's have you recovered from hot chips yet, George? Is George listening?
So...
What's wrong? I can hear you. Hello? Please tell me you can hear me, George. Or has George lost all audio? George can't hear us. Hello, George. Oh, this is fun. Hold a sign. Here's a sign. George just tried to connect to our live stream twice. That's a good one. That's a new one. We get a new issue every episode. It's
now I'm
we can hit we can hit.
Ah! I'm frustrated.
So
ways to support the channel. You can like and subscribe this video, and many thanks for doing so. There's also Patreon, which gives you access. There's a merchandise store and a newsletter. Links
went straight to stage, Dom.
For all of you gonna have to change.
Who do contribute, thank you.
I'll stop being clever.
Oh, lovely. George has left. This is the third time we've done a full disconnect and reconnect. We have Dom in the background trying to help adjust this well-oiled machine, but clear. Unfortunately, we're several thousand miles away from George right now. Let's hopefully he can get back on the run. The plan is this show to, from this nice hotel room where the lighting isn't actually too bad for videos in this one. It's the plan is to speak about AnandTech. Hopefully a number of you saw my video on the channel the fact that AnandTech has now officially closed down. We're going to go a bit into that, perhaps a bit more into the weeds, given some of the comments that came out of that video, and some of the feedback. And I'm actually obviously at an event right now. Excuse me. So people are coming up to me and giving me some feedback on it. Then we want to speak about Intel Lunar Lake, which was officially launched yesterday. I have some special swag to show. And we could also talk about Qualcomm's announcement today about their new 8-core Snapdragon X Plus processor and how they're approaching that. And then also I wanted to speak a little bit about Intel Foundry, just because there's been a lot of talk literally in the last couple of weeks about what Intel's doing with Foundry. So it's let's Nemez is first on the super chats. Thank you so much with the 500 Czech crowns. You're feeling rich, but thank you so much. Hey, you two, just dropping this here and dipping again. You know me, love the content, keep it up. Wouldn't be a proper stream without some form of technical difficulties. It's if you ever watch the top stuff, they have a show called Technical Difficulties. Let's Dom, can you add George back on the stage?
I just stopped trying to be clever at this point.
It's okay. So you're not using the DLSR. To be honest, you used it once at your desk, and I'm surprised you didn't keep it there.
So the reason why is that it's a pain in the butt to move to set it back up when I've moved it, because it has to get like back here. So
yes, but how often do you move it?
Well, when I have to pack it back up to move to hot chips.
Yeah, okay, so one event a quarter.
No, but hot chips and any other events that I go to in the future.
Yeah. So my argument there is that if you worked at a greengrocer's, every morning you have to roll your fruit out onto one of those things every morning. If you can't even do, you need.
Now, I don't think that this is me, but your audio is dying. I think your audio is dying. I think this is the 1 megabit upload is kicking in here.
Sort of do.
Yeah, it's great. So now my audio problems have moved over to Ian.
I know. No. Okay. I know what this is. So I am on the worst hotel Wi-Fi ever. No. I asked Dom to quickly spin up a video so we can play it later. However, because he saved it to our local drive, my system started downloading it on my 1 megabit. This is German internet at its finest.
All the Germans know the pain.
This hotel is 802.11g.
Oh, what is that?
Wi-Fi 3.
What is that? 2007, 2008?
Oh, before then, I think.
Oof.
04.
04. Yeah.
So yes, my bit rate is a potato.
Yes.
And it will stay a potato because the alternative is I go on mobile data, and that's probably just as bad. I can bring my camera down to say a 480p, and maybe that would be better.
Yeah, probably.
So
yeah.
Let's
just get into it.
Yeah, the G in 802.11g stands for good.
Yeah, if by good you mean utter tosh in 2024, then yeah.
I asked the funnest question during the Lunar Lake Q&A. because it was meant to be a silly question for them to make a joke. And it just so happens that it got asked by 2 other people later because they didn't hear the fact that I asked it first.
That's funny.
Which means, I guess, I'm ahead of the curve.
1 second, let me close my door.
The ever-present answering the door because there's a package. Maybe George's Lunar Lake sample has arrived. So, Sabine made a video on the bad internet in Germany. Yeah, it's
Sorry, I forgot to close my door, and I didn't want my my cats roaming in here and jumping onto the desk.
So I told everyone that was your Lunar Lake sample arriving.
I wish that would be neat if it just came on stream. We could have a live opening. Actually,
Let's get this show on the road. Okay, let's change. First? Yeah, let's change the banner so it says Tech Poutine. I'm going to start the stream with a small video, and let's see if this works. Yeah, okay. We'll see if this works. Play, damn it. No,
if you like this content, there are multiple ways to support the channel. You can like and subscribe this video, and many thanks for doing so. There's also Patreon, which gives you access to our Discord. There's a merchandise store and a newsletter, links in the description. For all of you who do contribute, thank you. You are keeping me well fed.
Hopefully that came through. This is just a tiny spot because both George and I do a ton of stuff, and there are many ways that people can interact with us through the channel. It's obviously amazing. We both have Discord servers. There's merchandise, and stuff happens. So first of all, let's speak about AnandTech. I mentioned in the pre-show I did a small video about the fact that it's now 27 years. Funny enough, 10 years to the day that Anand sold it. So people said it was going. Well, people said it went downhill after Anand sold it. Well, it lasted 10 years after Anand sold it. So the hill must have been pretty big, and the slope must have been pretty shallow. Either that, or we actually did some things right while I was there. It has annoyed me a bit, people saying it went downhill after Anand left, because god damn it, between me, Ryan, Andre, Billy, and a few others, we did try and keep it going.
So when Andre and then you left in quick succession, I kind of could tell that sounded the death toll. How long it would take after that, I didn't know, but I knew at that point it was the death toll. 2.5 years was that time span.
Yeah. I left end of February 22. But it was that video I did, it ended up being sort of like 25 minutes. Mm-hmm. I originally, because we had just filmed the last Tech Poutine.
Yeah.
Last week.
I was rushing to the airport.
You're rushing to the airport. I still had that studio for a couple of hours. And actually, I was really, really tired because 4 hours a night at Hot Chips. And our gracious hosts, said, we've got some time. Do you want to film anything else? And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll just do a monologue to camera, no script or nothing. And we ended up doing it in front of an LED wall, so that was kind of cool. That wasn't actually a green screen. That's what happens when you have $1 million studio. The studio was pretty nice, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very nice.
Yeah. So I sat down and I just monologued to camera. I'll be honest, I sat down thinking I'd do 6 minutes, not 25.
Things like that take a lot longer because I had to write something not similar, but sort of in that vein where you think it's going to be short and it ends up being 3,000 words.
Yeah, you have to avoid just saying stuff that comes to mind if you're monologuing on video. Because at least when you write, it can be disjointed and then you put it all together. But when you actually, record a video, you try and have like a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah. Well,
for example, what I really should have done that I didn't do was go through all the writers I'd worked with over the time I'd been there, and also, some of the previous people. So aside from Anand, there was also Gary Key. I'm not sure if you're aware, but he's left Linus Tech Tips now. He now works for Logitech. Yeah, I think it was down to some visa issues, because he was always they wanted him in Canada, and you have to get a visa if you're an American to go work in Canada. And I think after 2 years, Gary might have thought, well, it hasn't worked. So I know they're looking for a new head of labs. Hey, maybe Ryan can do that. Gary Key, who went to ASUS after AnandTech, Rajinder Gill, who was my predecessor on the motherboard side. We then obviously had Jared Walton, who was GPU then notebook. Brett Howes on notebooks. He's a pretty amazing dude. So glad to have met him through my time there. Then we had the smartphone crew. We had Brian Klug, Josh Ho, Brandon Chester. I think all of them went to work for Anand at Apple. Though I think some may have split. As in, there was Vivek Gowri. He did some systems. Then it was the SSD guys. We had Christian Vatto, who sort of forged a path in testing SSDs, carrying on Anand's legacy. He went to work for Samsung. Billy Tallis took over from Christian, and actually, I remember the year that I had to cover for Christian for a few months, because he reached the age where he had to join the Finnish military, because there's compulsory military service.
Yeah.
And as a result, I got to go to
military service like. We don't have this over here.
Yeah, it's he reached the age where he had to do a couple of years, and so I was covering him on at least the storage contacts, just keeping them happy. And that was my one and only visit to Korea. Samsung flew me out business class, because they had a new SSD. I want to say it was like the 860 Evo or something. But completely overkill for an SSD launch. And I remember asking very technical questions and not getting a lot of answers, but it was my one and only time in Korea. And then Christian happened to break his leg soon after, so he came very quickly back. Because obviously you can't continue military service if you have a broken leg. And and then Billy Tallis took over from Christian. Billy stayed longer than Christian, I think, actually, and he forged a lot of our power testing on SSDs. He went to work for Apple, funnily enough. I think he went and joined Anand's group. And then we had some of the freelancers who were a bit more free in their lancing. Nate O, who actually joined me on my first ever fab tour when that was at Global Foundries in Malta. I'm forgetting a couple of names here now. I'm gonna kill. I brought on. I'm not gonna find this in my Skype chat. I'm looking for a name. Oh, there's Billy. That's been how long since I spoke to Billy. Oh, that's right, Joe Shields. I brought Joe on to do some motherboards. He was my first ever direct report, and my regret with him is I never I asked him to take over some of the motherboard coverage, but I never really pushed him. Part of your role as a manager is to build the talent that works under you. And my one regret is I was so new to managing people, I didn't push him. But he did some good work. After him, Gavin took over for motherboards, and I actually pushed Gavin. We also had Ganesh. Ganesh and I think, joined at roughly the same time at AnandTech. But Ganesh works in the industry just like Clam does at Chips and Cheese. So it's in his part time. And then there was Tracy, power supplies and cases editor. He went under the name E. Philodictis. Part of the cohort from he asked us all internally to call him Tracy. He's part of this Greek crew who really loved to test power supplies. Because Aris, obviously, from Tom's Hardware and now Hardware Busters. If people remember the old overclockers, High Pro was always big into power supplies. For some reason, Greece and power supplies, they're like that. It's crazy. Nate, Joe. I'm trying to think. There was a couple more who came and went to do GPUs. I'm gonna keep going through here just until I find names. Dustin Sklavos, great dude. He left to go join Corsair and actually run their initially in sort of chassis design, and then he went to lead up their Corsair 1 division, their all-in-one PC. He actually now works for TensTorrent.
That's funny.
Well, no, so the fun thing there is he left Corsair, and obviously took some time, and then it's like, hey, I'm searching for a job, and I turned around to him and I said, you should apply to these guys. I'll put in a good word. My reference to TensTorrent, one of my clients, they reached out to me and said, hey, Dustin says he knows you and you used to work together. What's your thoughts on us hiring him? Give us your reference, essentially. I think I gave 6 words, and the response I got was hired.
Those must be some amazing 6 words. The best 6 words.
I think I said something like hardworking, straight to the point, right? It's one of the things about being a journalist in that sort of environment for so long, and he knew it. It's all about pace and output. Journalism is always about a quality dial. It's all about a dial, right? Quality versus speed. And that if you're super slow, you can get the best quality out, but sometimes you just need to get things out to move it along and actually make it a business. You can't spend 30 years on an article unless it's Pentium 4. Sorry, I'm going to bring that up every episode.
Or if it's an IBM transcript because you, again, fucked up the audio.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So I mean, that was one thing I should have said in the video. All the names of the people. I'm probably forgetting a few more. There's at least one GPU guy I'm forgetting the name of. The thing is, I can imagine the face, right?
Good with faces, bad with names.
But there's also a ton of people who wrote at AnandTech before I was even there. Christoph Katzer, who went to work for Be Quiet, right? Steven. I'm forgetting his last name. Stephen was there while I was there, and he went to work for SpaceX. So
that's a shift.
He was I think it was like an aeronautical engineer.
Okay.
Yeah, Matt Humrick as well. he was a smartphone for at least a year, if not two, and then of course Andre, who now works at Qualcomm in the Nuvia team, who I'm still frequently in contact with. So it's there's just a wealth of people that came out of AnandTech, went through the pipe, and are either doing stuff great or are still in the industry. Names definitely to keep track of for sure. And anybody can say, well, he's just tooting his own horn a little bit, but yeah, it's that video. It's I'm not in retrospect, I'm not sure how emotional I actually was. Because it's a thing
it was a very when I first read it, watched it, excuse me. It came off, so it was like a
somber,
emotional. Yeah, it was somber. It was very sort of. We all knew that this was. I shouldn't say we all, but folks in the know knew that something like this was coming. And it very much gave the tone of I hesitate to use the word defeat, but sort of inevitability.
I am inevitable. That's the thing. It's some of that stuff I was recording in the video is stuff that I was recording on the fly because I'd known about it for a week. So I know we had discussed it in advance because I asked you to reach out to some guys to archive the content. So of course I'd gone through most of it in my head. Some of the stuff I went through new for the first time as I was actually recording. But I'll be honest, I left 2.5 years ago. I had gone through the motions, right, of separation. 5 stages of grief, right?
Yeah.
It's that sort of thing. So it's I wouldn't say I was acting, but it's. I don't think it was as emotional as I think I made it out to be. I don't know.
It again, like I said, it was emotional in the sort of reserved, like somber way.
Yeah.
It wasn't emotional in the crying and sort of grief way.
Yeah.
It was reserved, but it was there, especially as somebody who knows you. It knows.
Yeah, sort of, you can tell when I'm being serious.
Yeah, serious. I hesitate to say down to earth because you're almost always down to earth, but like.
Well, so to just clear a few things up in the video as well. It kind of went under the radar a little bit. A few people picked it out, but I said that AnandTech was officially a division or a brand of Tom's Hardware. So for those of you who didn't watch the video or know the timeline, AnandTech was acquired in 2014 by Perch, a publisher called Perch. Perch had a number of brands, Laptop Mag, Tom's Guide, that sort of thing, and Tom's Hardware, incidentally. And because the new editor-in-chief, Ryan, was new, they wanted to put him under somebody experienced. So technically, they made AnandTech a division of Tom's Hardware. So in the hierarchy, you've got your list of brands, your Tom's Guide, your Laptop Mag, your Tom's Hardware. Instead of having AnandTech as another one in the same line, AnandTech was actually one down. And that was purely for logistic and experience reasons. But then, within 3 years, when it was sold again, to Perch, to Future. Yeah, Future acquired pretty much all the B2C brands from Perch.
Business to consumer, correct?
Yeah. There's B2B press and B2C press, and after that acquisition, that hierarchy stayed the same. But everybody involved in the initial acquisition who knew about this had gone because synergy cuts with acquisitions and stuff. Yeah. So that never changed the whole time I was there. We were always still technically a brand of Tom's Hardware. That meant that the Tom's Hardware administration, so the editor-in-chief and the people there, were technically in control of all of AnandTech's, in control of and responsible for AnandTech's output and budgets. So they, it meant that during the period of when COVID hit, for example, everybody's budget got yanked, right? 40% cuts across the board in budget, and some even more extreme. When the budget started coming back, it always felt like AnandTech's budget wasn't being refilled because Tom's Hardware might be refilling their own budget. I mean, I've got no words or paper to say that that is definitively the case, but that's kind of how it felt at the time, because we had to let a lot of our freelancers go. A name I didn't mention earlier, Anton Shilov, who's still very much, part of the fabric in Tech Press and has been, since I started. So we had to let Anton go, and then he started writing for Tom's because Tom's had the budget.
Yeah.
You can kind of see how how that comes across. So that's it was always weird like that. It meant that from a logistical and a hierarchical standpoint, AnandTech kind of never got a seat at the table, or if it did, it was never in the same line. So it meant that and this is because the publisher was very familiar with, most of their brands were what I call cookie cutter brands. 95% of their traffic comes from people who visit less than once a month from Google. AnandTech always had a dedicated audience. So it's 50% of the audience would be people who would visit once a day, once a week, regularly. The amount of stories of people saying, "Oh, you were my 6 websites that I check every day," and AnandTech was one of them. For years and years and years. Perch and subsequently Future never knew how to monetize that because that was so abstract to all the other brands in the business. So we got treated like other brands in the business, and I remember discussions. We'd get the analysis. Patriots talking about news from Intel CFO at the City Conference. We may address this later. That's definitely a thing to talk about. So it was, didn't get a proper seat at the table. It also meant we flew under the wire so we could remain more independent. And then the admin would turn around and say, "Okay, we did an analysis of all your product segments. So CPU, motherboard, GPU, power supply, keyboards, cases, storage, mini PCs. And here's the ranking, it was a mixture of traffic and profitability and stuff. And so obviously, it was basically to say, this is what makes you most money. This is what you shouldn't spend time on. As in, you shouldn't spend time on keyboards. You shouldn't spend time on cases." So part of what we did is, we deprioritized some of those market segments. But then it turns out the person reviewing mini PCs, who has a job in the industry and is doing it part-time, only wanted to review mini PCs. So if you didn't let him review mini PCs, he would go do it somewhere else. So that content would be lost. So there was a big pushback because we had, the publishers was used to freelancers doing what they were told, whereas AnandTech had freelancers who did what they loved. And I think that came through in the content as well.
Yes.
And Linus kind of talked about this on the WAN show on Friday. It meant that as AnandTech lost people, but kept freelancers who were only doing one thing, on the front page, it's power supply, cooler, mini PC from Chinese company you've ever heard of, mini PC from Chinese company you've ever heard of, which is great content in the middle of big stuff. Mm-hmm. The CPU, the GPU, the architecture, the big disclosures, the big announcements. But when that's all you have, it becomes a dull read.
Yeah.
So, and as AnandTech over time, we lost people, right? It's journalism doesn't pay engineers that well, right? They pay engineers like journalists. Yeah. And if anything, and if a publisher's willing to do anything, they're willing to pay less. So this was always our problem. This is why so many people left to go join Anand at Apple, or like say Christian to Samsung, or Matt Humrick went back into the aerospace industry, and so did Stephen, because you could earn 3 to 10x as an engineer in the industry than actually writing stuff online, because that's how the money was at the time, which meant you have to cycle through new people. And after Anand left, we kind of never got new people. That was half the issue. I've noticed a lot of people talk about, and I appreciate me going on this, because this is again a bit more stream of thought. A number of people said AnandTech died because of the advent of AI. AI had nothing to do with it, right? It's not about AI generated content. AnandTech was always good at getting near the top of Google searches. When we joined Future, we found out that they had an SEO team for each brand. Each brand had an SEO person, and it was their job every day to check 200 keywords. And if we weren't number one in that keyword, then we would have to write something to make sure that we're number one, or update something. So every so often you'll see the not Tom's Guide, the Tech Radar Cannon Lake article. It will say last updated February 20th, 2024.
Yeah, I always felt that odd. Like I never fully understood that.
Because if Google sees it updated repeatedly, then it's an active page, and therefore it ranks it higher. Yeah, dead product for how many years, and it's still being updated because it's not number one in the it's, I don't know. I mean, I did one of only 2 reviews of Cannon Lake at the time, right? There was me and Austin Evans. We're the only people who reviewed, at least in English and in main tech media. I mean, that was another thing, right? Anand's big thing when he left was the cable TVification of the internet. Talking about going down the subscription routes, and you'd have lower traffic, but more curated content, I guess.
That seems so like prophetical now.
Well, the thing is, it was, but AnandTech never acted on it. I mean, I've told you this story, right? Tech Potato's been going for just over 4 years now, technically. And I started while I was still at AnandTech, and technically in the pandemic, but I decided to start it before then. It was, and I think for at least 12, 18 months previous, I was talking, to Ryan and to the editor-in-chief of Tom's at the time, which, mixture of people during that period, saying, we need to do video. Even though we were losing people, we need to do video. Future at the time, they had video teams for brands. They had studios. They had equipment. But the way it worked internally seemed that if a brand has equipment, it's for the brand. It's not for anyone else in the company, or something similar, which seems dumb. There was also Future Studios, which was another division, and that's for creating sponsored content. So when say Samsung commissions a flyby of an SSD where it the 20-second clip that they do before the presentation. Yeah, that's what Future Studios produced, right? That sort of thing.
But yet they would let you do like video like.
No, but it's
like that.
No, so I was just told, if you want to do it, you've got to do it yourself. There's no support. So I said, well, if I'm going to do it myself, I'm going to do it under my own brand. And I've had a couple of people tell me what they should have told me at that point is, no, you can't do it under your own brand. Again, to bring up Linus again, he has had at times rules in his organization that you can't start up a Twitch channel or whatever, or your own YouTube channel in order to monetize off of your notoriety for working at LTT, right? Which in some businesses is fair. You can agree with it or not, and on some level, and I do, and some level I don't. People are saying that Future should have turned around and said, no, if I create video, I have to do it under AnandTech. If you create art while you work for Disney, in your free time, it technically is copyright Disney, not you. Disney owns it. But I think because of where I was in AnandTech, if they'd have said no, I would have left.
Yeah.
Right. It's
you have the power to just go, see ya.
Part of me is type A, right? I always want to improve. I always want to go up in whatever I'm doing. And video became the outlet for me at the time. Because I was just, writing review after analysis, after test, after event, after an event. If you leave it to humans, they'll optimize the fun out of everything. And I'd scripted all my benchmarking. And, if AI had been around, I could have, optimized, ad-libbed my reviews as well. Maybe not. So it's, and then, the only stipulation I had when I started the channel, and Ryan was very clear, is that if I accept a sponsorship from anyone, I wasn't allowed to write about them on AnandTech, which is fair, I guess.
Yeah.
But it was like an absolute forever, you cannot work. And only one company met that bar, and that was Facebook. Facebook actually reached out and said, you've got this like atomic clock on a PCIe card, and they paid me a few thousand for a couple of videos, and from that point I was never to make any content about Facebook ever again, which was fine because Facebook never really came up because of how content had been shifted. One of the ways content has shifted is due to the business model evolving, and I kind of touched upon this in the video, but the three main routes for revenue in that business is ads, is sponsored content, or it's affiliate links. AnandTech tried to avoid the sponsored content for as long as possible. Ryan, ran defense on that a fair bit, because sponsored content pays quite well, more so in video than written, I guess. But affiliate links is essentially, here's a review of an Intel CPU. Here's where you can buy Intel CPU. So if you're doing a piece about the latest AI silicon that isn't NVIDIA, that has no affiliate value because you can't sell anything off the back of that content. And so it was steered more towards consumery type stuff. There was less willingness and less approval for me to go to IEEE events where I learn about new materials in semiconductors, which is stuff that I love to do and I can do now. That was which is again comes down to a publisher knowing what a brand is, and I never think Future fully understood what AnandTech was. It was trying to push the boundaries. It was a place where engineers could find out about cool products and cool stuff and what's happening in the industry. I mean, two big articles that get quoted every time people speak about AnandTech. The ARM Diaries, where Anand basically lays out ARM's business model as they were starting to take off. And the other one was the SSD Anthology, basically how SSDs work, right? I don't think that in my last few years at AnandTech, those articles would have been approved if they had approached management, because they're not. ARM Diaries, what do? Attach a phone as an affiliate link? Yeah. SSDs is perhaps a bit more prevalent, but that was an article that was about SSDs before SSDs were a big thing.
Yes, like back in the early late aughts, early 10s.
Deep dive into Optane. So it's
still Optane deads, guys.
Yeah.
But
so video gave me that outlet. Sometimes I do the same content on the website and the video. I just made sure to do the website first, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what was paying the bills. So yeah, and then I think in 2022 it was a combination of Billy, the SSD editor, left in June, I think, and then Andre left in this is 21. Billy left June 21 to go join Apple. Andre left in December, and I think within a few days of Andre officially leaving, I'd known that he was going to be leaving for a while, but yeah, I think within a few days I decided to leave. Am I still there? I think my graphics driver just reset.
Yeah, your video stopped and then restarted.
Yeah, okay.
You're fine.
But yeah, I had ideas for the website. It's AnandTech has a benchmark database literally called Bench. It's anandtech.com/bench, and that had every benchmark I'd ever run in there, and that was unmonetized at all. We didn't put affiliate links on anything. It was just a bunch of data that anybody could have scraped and monetized as themselves as well. So it's just little things like that. It got to I was asking for little changes on the website, and oh no, we can't bother our site admin, the one who actually designed our CMS, because it's tax season and he's actually a CPA by trade. So that's just stuff like that was and things like just adding a line, getting changing the back end UX just to be more seamless. It was always corporate, right? Corporate structure. Yeah. In order to get anything changed, you have to go through 18 people.
Yeah.
So
corporate is well corporate, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. But by the time I decided to leave, I'd already been told for more than a couple of years that I was underemployed. I'd make a lot more money as an analyst. I have a few good friends in the analyst community who basically said, come work for us. And, a couple of them helped me through that transition because it was never clear what an analyst does.
Yeah.
And to be honest, they still didn't make it any clearer. I now can tell you what an analyst does and present it in a way that makes sense to pretty much everyone. So yeah, it's so a funny story on that. It's a bit hard to go from salaried to working for yourself because you have a steady paycheck when you're salaried. And I went to both AMD and Intel, who, in the space of 2 days, spoke to like their CMO equivalent, who I knew, and basically turned around and said, "How do you work with your analysts?" And I think one of them spent 2 hours with me at a day's notice, and the other one spent an hour and a half with me at a day's notice, which for a CMO, nobody has 2 hours to speak. So the story is, I reached out to the CMO of AMD, and I said, I'm in town tomorrow. Do you have some time to talk about how you work with analysts? He's not the CMO, but he's pretty important. And our good friend Patrick Kennedy from Serve the Home was prodding me, saying, BCC Lisa. BCC Lisa.
That's something you would totally do.
And just out of sheer frustration where I was in my head, I did. and I sent that email at 7 a.m. because I was flying from like Austin to Dallas for a day trip, and I was flying back that evening. Apparently, she emailed the person who I was asked to meet 10 minutes later, saying make time for Ian.
That's how you've made it in this industry, is when a CEO like that just goes, "Yeah, you meet him now."
That's it. To be honest, this is before she was a billionaire. But yeah,
still,
it's
at the time AMD was
still
right.
yeah, and both AMD and Intel basically said, make the transition. We'll work with you. That's not a problem. And then if it doesn't work, we've got a job for you. So that was my safety net to move. Mm-hmm. But yeah, going back onto the AnandTech thing, it's I don't think it would ever be bought. Because I have no faith that the publisher actually will sell it for a reasonable value. I mean,
I know that some folks attempted,
have inquired. Well, they're not attempted, acquired, but never even got a modicum of response. So the website has best part of 25,000 articles, of which half are news. How much is that worth? With no editorial staff.
With no staff?
150 grand, 200 grand?
I would argue it's the value of the name alone, because that's it.
So
because all the articles were probably already on the Internet Archive.
I would, but then again, if I asked you guys to archive it, if you post that online, I fully expect them to come after you for copyright. Right.
Sure, but I know for a fact that it's on the Internet Archive. Like, it's been archived since.
I know, but nobody really counts the Internet Archive. That's the thing. I fully expect that Future won't even entertain ideas below a couple mil. And nobody I know is going to pay a couple mil for it. So.
Well, and the issue is that when that would have made sense was before
after
this
it, and then sold it.
Yeah. Was well before this announcement, because now, if you try and revive the name, it has a certain prestige and history. And if you don't follow that, you will just get it. It will never work. Period. Right.
One of my suggestions was to buy the domain name AnandTech. When TLDs were opened up, and it was for like $5,000. I was like, surely that's a slam dunk, because then that you're URL short. It's easier to track. It's whatever. I sent an email and I get, no, you have to justify the business use case for buying this domain. Like, surely surely it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. You would think.
So, or I don't even mean AnandTE.ch. The Swiss one. That's a cop out. Yeah. I'm just saying literally AnandTech. So it's the minute it became just Andre and I and Billy, at least when Billy left, it became circling the drain, right? Because I know between Andre and I, that's not enough people to keep AnandTech running.
Yeah.
No GPU reviews for a long time. We tried bringing on a couple of people to do GPU benchmarking. I think both people screwed up in big ways for big launches that caused big delays. And it's when you hire people, typically there's a grace period, right?
Yeah.
At the beginning, the name escapes me. Somebody tell me what it is. And the point is, if it doesn't work after 3 months, you agree to part ways or whatever.
I know.
Yeah.
I know what the name is, and I can't. Not grace period.
Yeah, I know. It's my my brain's full of other stuff right
cooling
now.
Off period.
No, not a cooling off period. That's something else. Yeah, and we just never brought probation. There we go. Thank you. Thanks to multiple people. Yeah, and we just never brought anybody on in that, and that's really what you have to do is you have to cycle people. I think we did 3 call for writers in 3 consecutive years, and we never got in contact with anyone that applied.
Yeah, I know I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to start doing that. How, I have no idea, but
yeah,
unfortunately,
But it's
somebody. There's been I've been working with somebody on an article, and I keep getting busy, and I keep forgetting about it, and I feel so bad.
That always happens,
right? I feel so bad, and it's just like how do I partition my time? Because
but between Dom and I think I'm 5 videos behind, and I can see him in the backstage area nodding his head. He's getting ahead on the editing, but that's good. It's
But I know that CNC is gonna have to put up a call for writers.
But it's the fact that we didn't even approach anyone or ask anyone, and we got about 100 submissions for each year, and I tried to be involved, but management at Future just wouldn't let me get involved, right? As the second in command for the site, it's like, no, I can go through some of these applications and give feedback and approach people and conduct interviews.
And your mistake was you're not a hiring manager. That was your mistake.
Yeah, it's I was basically told, no, you write articles, that's where you're good. You need to keep the site up and running by writing, so go write. And that's kind of the stuff what did me in, so. Yeah, I don't know, there's a lot of people said they they stopped reading after a while because AnandTech just didn't have enough content. Back in the day, I remember Anand got really annoyed at all the staff because we were still freelancers back then because there was no new article on the website in a week. It's like, how do we go? How do we keep the site going if we don't have content in a week? How have we got to a point where everybody's just not got anything ready and there's nothing in the pipe? I mean, again, to bring up Patrick Kennedy at Serve the Home, he has at least 20 articles in the pipe at any given time. But I mean, complete.
Yeah.
So if he takes a week off, doesn't matter, content's already done. Yeah. And he keeps that going between him and his team, so it's a bit insane.
Yeah.
So it's there have been a few questions, and I know I've gone on and blabbed.
I think we should probably move to. It's been an hour basically ranting about AnandTech and corporate structure. I think it's time to move to Intel. So I do see.
So let's get some of the question.
I see high yield in chat. No, I'm not in Berlin.
Yeah,
couldn't make it.
So let's go through some of the questions. Kuranil asks, "What do you miss about working at AnandTech?" It's the fact that everybody in the room was technical, and you could speak about things honestly, and you all had a goal. It's a bit different speaking to other people in the industry. To be honest, even speaking with George, right, because we're under different publications and we each run our own thing, it's different to speaking to somebody internally about a topic, because you both know that there's like a content piece in mind. So, and yeah, now, so it does working with chips.
You could solve this by just essentially hiring me on paper, but.
Yeah, no, it's a little bit different, but does working with chips and cheese now bring back some of that feeling? It does in a way, because again, well, yeah, speaking with either George or Chester, you can go into some of this detail, and it's but I guess almost in the same way when I speak to Sally. Sally and I can speak about AA hardware until the cows come home, and we don't need to explain acronyms to each other and stuff, or if we do, we know the right level to technical pitch it. So it's that's what two things I like about what I do. One, speaking about it, and two, educating people about it. My whole life, and I guess the third thing is telling people what to do about it. That's part of the consultancy thing I do. So actually, that's one thing I want to do, and we might turn this into a short. Is explain what an analyst does, and the media and the press. Mm-hmm. So George has probably heard this a number of times, but you have in general the media, right? And inside you have press or traditional press, usually written press. Then you have influencers. Then you have analysts. Written press and influencers, I don't think I need to explain what they do. Analysts splits into three segments, by and large. One, you have financial analysts. People who are tracking stock, people who are tracking inventories, people who are tracking business units. Investors. Yeah, they can be buy side or sell side. We can there's some differentials in there, but financial. Right? They track Wall Street, and that's what they do. Then you have institutional analysts. Institutional analysts are the big established players that do market research reports, like Gartner, like IDC, like Mercury, like Omdia. And they essentially, their job is to write reports and sell them. Arguably right now, I'd put Dylan from Semi-Analysis and his team in that segment. They are, 10, 12 people now? And most of their revenue is from writing reports.
I still like your classification for them, which is
financial influencer.
Yeah.
It's essentially it's larger companies whose main revenue is from reports. And then you have the independent analysts, which I fall under. Now there are many flavors, but most of them are essentially I fall under the technical marketing consultant title, right? I help companies find the right way to talk about the technical detail in their product. Based on what I'm hearing, with how markets are going, when I speak to customers of a business, I give them feedback and also give them ideas on what to say about their new product. I was emailing a client, just before this, going back and forth on the right way to say something that will make people like George in the which I would classify as traditional press, basically answer your questions before you have them, or make sure that there's a line of thinking that everyone can follow at even the most basic level. Because my background is technical content and how to tell a story from to my grandma. How to tell a technical story from my grandma. So in the middle of that is technical marketing, and that's kind of where I play. Independent analysts also do a bit of message amplification. So you'll see a lot of analysts write on Forbes or their own blogs, for example, or tweet threads for events where their clients are hosting. It's if you saw some of the presentations today out of IFA that had lots of quotes on the screen. Some of those were by press, some of those were from independent analysts who the company pays. So are they truly independent quotes? If am I truly independent from my clients? Yeah, it's that sort of argument. So that's how I describe analysts. You have financial, institutional, independent, and I'm on the independent side. So yeah, and as Darrell Smith said, Poutine the tech in technical marketing consultancy. I'll also bring this up, Billy Bob. YouTubers aren't real journalists, I agree. Now the thing is, as technical media, right? You tend to have either enthusiasts who want to write, journalists who are turning to tech, or engineers who are turning to write. So George is a physicist by trade, right? So
I wouldn't say that, but yeah, I would.
Okay, but by training, you're a physicist.
Yes.
Right. So I'd classify him as in the engineer segment. I'm a chemist, so I come under the engineer segment. Linus came from NCIX, so he was an enthusiast. Tom's Hardware has a number of, and PC World have a number of traditionally trained journalists who write about technology, right? So it's, media and influencers fall under that bracket. And you can tell when, somebody's definitely a journalist, when somebody's definitely an enthusiast. It's when those lines get crossed for like being an investigative journalist. If you haven't had proper journalist training or experience doing it, then you may come under fire from how you do it, right?
Yeah.
It's rear-wheel drive, please. One says, I see more journalistic integrity in YouTubers. When you're able to be funded by the algorithm, that allows you to, if you can, examine your own biases. The problem with large institutional networks, and even with Future never told me what to write. We never did pay for play. That was never a thing at Future. However, I know like Sinclair Media will send a memo out to all of its hundreds of stations in the US and say, you need to do a segment on this and you must include this paragraph. And so that does dictate
Ian, you're dying again.
A good amount because they know who can. Yeah, I'm always dying. This hotel internet. So I will say this: what do you consider Moore's Law is dead to fall under?
A joke.
Enthusiast.
Okay. If I could get on my soapbox for a minute.
I've spoken for an hour. It's all yours.
So something that really sort of ticks me off about folks like MLID, and even some of the written press that just sort of writes about what he talks about.
Okay, it's okay. So to distinguish there, you have journalists and reporters.
Yes.
The reporter's job is to not give you any conclusive analysis. Right?
Yes.
So it's not the reporter's job to fact check.
Which I find really dumb, but that's just the me thing, I guess.
Well, so online media, and especially online tech media, I would consider actually PC World one of the most true to honest, original. They follow a very original media, pre-internet style of reporting. Yes. Even though they don't have a fact check board that a traditional newspaper would, right? Because in this sort of realm, you don't have that sort of thing. But if you're taught as a journalist, that's a key part of your training. The difference between being a journalist and being a reporter. So when somebody reports on a leak channel, whether that's Tom at MLID or Jim at Adored or GamerMeld or any of these others, all they're simply reporting is what somebody said, and they're leaving the analysis up to the reader. The fact that that is content that publishers feel is worth producing, yes, makes me sick to the stomach.
Yeah.
Don't give those people the time of day.
Yeah.
However, at AnandTech, there were some instances where I needed to report stuff that was being said elsewhere. Now, typically, I'd wait until I actually had confirmation of some of the sources, right? I wouldn't write a story about a leaked code name unless I could go verify it myself through my own sources. So I was being journalist, not reporter. I was adding my own layer of confirmation.
I have to sort of, I hesitate to use the word give up the phrase give up the ghost, but I do have to sort of admit to my sins that we have written about like leaks before, but it was in a what should you take away from this sort of.
Yeah. Right? Okay, so
I had this argument with of what was said, which is what some folks do.
I had this argument with Paul Alcorn from Tom's Hardware, while I was still at AnandTech, because they started going down this route of reporting on every leak, but also providing the "do we think you should believe this leak" section. Their argument being, we are domain matter experts, right? We should tell you if this leak is worthwhile or not. My argument was, if the leak isn't worth anything, don't give it air by writing about it.
Yeah. If it's not worth anything, unless the only exception I'll give to that is if it takes off, like in the public zeitgeist. At which point, sure, you can address it because you're not really spreading it at that point. But
you're not providing hot air to the situation. But it's easy content. If you are a domain matter expert, it's very easy to go look at a leak and go, yeah, that's stupid. That's not worthwhile. Intel Arc is dead. What? That sort of thing. But then also, if you work for a publication that also says just buy it. There are also opinion pieces, and we can debate whether those are useful. So
anyway, I think that we should probably.
Yeah, that's AnandTech and journalism and analyst life and influencer life. No, I'm not an anal fluencer, as people like to suggest. I'm trying to act like I'm a first analyst influencer, but really it's 80-20, 80% analyst, 20% influencer. Okay, let's go on to section 2. This one, Lunar Lake. And I'm going to full screen this so I can see properly as well. Yesterday, Intel in Berlin at the IFA trade show, public show, officially... Is this an official announcement? Because it's not a launch.
It's a what I'm going to class as a chip launch, not a product launch. And I make that distinction because here's where I'll make the difference between what is a launch and an announcement. When you have a SKU list, to me that is a launch. If you don't have a SKU list, you don't have a launch.
So they have, but it's, you remember when Samsung would launch a smartphone but say it's on shelves in a month.
Yeah.
Right? It's that.
But, but here's the thing, right? Samsung was the OEM of basically everything other than maybe the chip.
But today we all...
Whereas for Intel, that's not the case.
But today we had the Acer Press launch and the Asus Press launch. So,
that's what I would consider a product announcement.
Yeah.
It's weird because there's about 50 different ways I could split this, but to me, this is a one. Like they launched Lunar Lake as a product that is now public.
Yeah, we went through the architecture back at Computex. George at chipsandcheese.com has articles on all the architectures. Do go and read those. We've gone over them.
And an interview. We have an interview with Arik Gahan from Intel, who worked on the SoC side of Lunar.
Yeah. So don't worry, Dom. I'll move these slides if you're clicking them. If not, then my system's playing it. But so yeah. So this new generation is called Intel Core Ultra. Again, this is not the replacement for Meteor Lake. This is a brand new product line.
It in some ways replaces MTLU at the low end of the TDP.
No. From a corporate perspective, this is a new product line.
Okay, yeah. From a corporate perspective, this is a new swim lane. Yeah.
So, and this comes through the AIPC, stuff. Believe it or not, it's AIPC is a term that's here to stay. Whether you think it sells devices or not, I'll leave that up to you. And I say that because 3 of my clients are all the people who sell AIPCs. But it's this chip on the left, and it just so happens that as part of the briefing, there was a little freebie, and you may have seen this online already.
You got one for me.
I'm gonna go big screen, just me for a second. You can still hear George, but this is Intel Core Ultra Series 2, encased in lucite. And I'm glad companies are realizing that this is a good way to promote their stuff, because they get a lot of images online.
Yeah.
This one is different to the others. Previously, they would either be screws in the corner, so you could unscrew it, or it'd be 2 pieces of, that you could separate due to magnets.
It's fully encased.
This is fully encased.
Sorry.
There is technically 2 halves, but the seal is actually really good.
Yeah.
So this is what we're talking about. This is a dead chip or a incomplete chip, because they realized, hey, let's provide some of these for press, for analysts, for media, because it looks cool on the desk. And I've got an Alder Lake one, I've got a Raptor Lake one. Now I've got a Lunar Lake. I've got Jet Threadripper Gen 1. I've got a Genoa. I've got a Rome.
Actually, from Hot Chips, I got a SDXC one encased in lucite as well.
Yeah. So it's becoming
encased in lucite.
Yeah, it's becoming a standard thing. But so Lunar Lake design goals, you can read here. It's efficiency, performance, graphics, and compute. And what we have here is a chip that's not monolithic. We'll go into tiles in a second, with onboard DRAM. So it kind of looks like Apple. And the idea here is that by packaging it here, you save a little bit on the latency, not so much that it cares.
You don't. The latency the latency delta here is that. Here's the thing: the actual latency to the RAM and back is almost never your actual bottleneck in your latency. So that is not an issue.
But the memory controller runs at 100 millivolts less, so you're saving power.
Yeah. So I actually had this debate with somebody. And I was saying how memory on package doesn't really save power. And that's true from the memory perspective. As far as I understand, it doesn't really save power. But from the PHY perspective, you do save power, because you don't have to run it as hard, right? Because your traces aren't as long.
Yeah. But having the memory so close to the chip does mean that, where the power comes from, or where the heat's generated, you've got to be mindful of that. It also fixes the amount of memory on the chip at manufacturing. So there are some trade-offs, but it does
cost saver for the OEM.
Yeah, the packaging on the motherboard means that you can make the motherboard smaller, so you can put more battery in as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the brand name for this Lunar Lake is Intel Core Ultra processors, Series 2.
I hate this naming scheme.
Personally, the goal of this, the goal of this naming scheme is to remove the generation from it. The argument being is that enthusiasts and OEMs and retailers will look at the SKU anyway. So the SKU naming is still for the generation and where it is in the value chain, but the branding isn't. And to parallel this, how many years have we been talking of people saying, I've got a Core i5, I've got a Core i7, I've got a Core i3, but they never tell you what generation it is. You have to ask for the SKU. It's been that way for ages. So their argument here is also, to a certain extent, if I can bring this up, Ace of Spades up properly. Come on, Ace of Spades says the naming scheme sucks, but it's way better than AMD's. I'm
just going to point up for this.
Yeah. I may have had some influence on some naming schemes, so it's The benefit here, actually, can I point out an error? No, there's an error I want to point out, which is kind of funny. But historic x86 performance per watt. So the goal here is efficiency, and these are the Intel Core Ultra 200V. I'm on slide 5. Oh no, mine's catching up.
There we go. No, okay. There we go.
No, my for some reason my interface is slower than what's actually streaming. Okay, so historic x86 performance per watt, Intel Core Ultra 200V. So 2 for Series 2. The other zeros will be where it is in the stack, and V means Lunar Lake. I actually asked this question. This is the question that got asked 3 times in the Q&A. I said, everybody knows what U, H, and S stands for. What does V stand for? And they went, it doesn't stand for anything. And I went, okay, so what? Very good? And they laughed.
What I don't get is, why do you think Revive? Why?
Well, so broadly speaking, this part was built for 9 watts. That was the design point when it was planned. It scales beyond that, obviously. So, and yes, Y used to be the 9 watt parts, but they're saying power, graphics, AI stuff. Okay, here's the slide. What's wrong with this slide?
Why is it like almost falling off a cliff?
No, it's not that.
Also, that's not Robert Halleck's position.
It is. He got promoted.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No, that processor has been flipped in the horizontal axis.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Why am I the only one to notice that?
Because that's something that my brain just autocorrect. Like, I don't notice that. Though, if you go to a different slide, if you go back to I think the prior, the one before that, there.
Yeah.
Massive leap in graphics. That's not the graphics side. That's the I/O die. The graphics is the big die, or the graphics is all the big die. That's the little die. That's the platform controller die, or tile.
My thing is doing being. The way I notice it is that the die that's empty should be in the bottom left corner, because that's a structural die, right?
Yeah.
So when I go to slide 6 here and I see it in the wrong corner,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good enough.
It's why am I not typing? Yeah, okay. So yeah, slide 6. It's being flipped. We've been over most of these in a previous tech Poutine, so I won't go over them. We know it's Meteor Lake. We know it's we know it's Lunar Lake. We know the 2 E-cores to 4 E-cores, and they're calling it low power E-cores, and it's not really comparable, given the argument. But the idea here is that it has better package power for a given performance benchmark. Here it's UCL Procyon. With Skymont, this is literally just the E-cores. It's lower power than Qualcomm's Orion cores for a plus 7% better performance.
Yeah.
So what they're saying is E-cores are higher performance than Orion cores. Is that what they're saying?
No.
But it's with the addition of Skymont.
So what they're saying here, as best as I can understand this slide, is they're talking about the performance in UCL Procyon or UL Procyon, which is better than Qualcomm in terms of performance and better in performance per watt.
Yeah.
They're just saying, but because that's the case because of Skymont and
Thread Director.
Thread Director. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's going to be a bunch of numbers on here. Yeah, they're saying graphics with the new XE2, which is the basis for Battlemage, it's going to be 2x gen on gen performance per watt. Some additional caveats here is going to be exactly on watt settings. It's and then package power, gen on gen. Yeah, you'll notice these slides have a light blue and a dark blue in the legend, but there's no dark blue on the graph.
Yeah.
So
what they mean by that is the baseline is Meteor Lake. I don't particularly like this slide, but just have the 2 bars and show me that. Don't give me a line.
So what's interesting about this slide is it's package power. So for Meteor Lake, that doesn't include the memory. For Lunar Lake, it does. So even with the onboard memory, package power is lower on Lunar.
I mean, go back.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, for at least 3 of these, you really shouldn't be powering up the memory that often. Like traditional LPD should be drawing that much power. There is going to be a savings there, but how much? It's a bit toss. Like it's a bit of toss up. Anyway.
Yeah.
This slide. This slide.
Battery lives.
This slide to the next slide just made me hang my head, because what Intel's saying here is, in an actual workload, we're worse.
No. So in the briefing for this, because this is the briefing slides, George was at the briefing. Yeah. Robert went to say, look, in productivity workloads, we do have better battery life. You can't win them all, and to show that, we are behind in teams.
Then what so if I was doing this slide, what I would have changed is the amount of numbers on this slide. I would have added more numbers. I know that takes time, but I would have added more numbers, because if you I would have had less. Slide, so you would have just removed the teams.
Well, I would have fewer numbers. Sorry, just to be grammatically correct. I'd have 1 slide for Procyon and another for teams.
Fair enough. My thing here is, okay, I understand that you want to put your best foot forward, but you also want to show that you won't always win. Like I understand that completely, but if you just get this slide with no context, like I said, my first thought was you're showing yourself losing. Like this does not speak well of the product. So you either have a separate slide that explains this, or you have more numbers to try and, I hesitate to use the phrase drown out, but to try and equalize what's shown on the slide.
Assume people will take the slide in isolation and not rely on the crap around it. Is this, to be honest, this is something that happened at AnandTech. Whenever we do results slides, companies would say, can you make your graphs more complete? Because China would take your graphs and not take the words around it, explaining it. So, and as Chris Jackson says, imagine a 12.7-hour Teams meeting.
I would rather defenestrate myself.
Yeah. And you have a Fenestra right beside you. To be honest, these days a lot of my clients are switching to Zoom, and I think Zoom is a lot better. Oh yeah, to go back to these numbers, sorry, on slide 12. This is with the same chassis, exactly the same design, just optimized for each CPU.
This slide makes no sense to me. This slide seems redundant.
No, so the point is these aren't the same chassis. These are similar devices from the same OEM. So I think it's like a ZenBook this and a ZenBook that and a ZenBook that. And they're saying that the Intel actually had the lowest battery and AMD had the biggest, but they're all roughly 14 to 16% at the same 150 nits, all set to 1080p.
If I remember correctly, actually, if these are all the VivoBook or the ZenBook chassis, then these should actually all have basically identically sized batteries.
You know how the VivoBook and the ZenBook are different designs.
Yes.
Yeah. This is that.
Intel.
The point is, there's no one chassis that has all three. So
that's not true.
Try to be roughly.
That's not true. The VivoBook is that chassis. The S14 has all these chips.
Does that come with discrete graphics?
No.
Well, go email Robert Hallock. Explain your displeasure.
But I couldn't say that like yesterday. But I was looking at this, I was going, wait, you have the same chassis.
Yeah. Maybe the Lunar Lake VivoBook isn't ready yet.
Maybe. I don't know.
So, but yeah, this is sort of general overview. Most of this is generational. The one on the bottom right is Qualcomm.
Daryl Smith, BCC Lisa.
Yeah. Don't. She's not the one who checks the email these days anyway. Okay, so then we get into core performance, E-core, P-cores. So this is again what we covered back in the tech day a few months ago. The fact that they don't have SMT, they don't have hyperthreading this gen because it improves their power per area.
On this right side of this graph chart, how are you getting plus 15%? That's not how math works. Like 0.95 times 0.85 is not 1.15.
No, but you've got two threads.
Oh, okay, but that's not what that's saying. I don't understand that slide.
Well, it doesn't tell you the area change. It's just in relation to
it says perf per area. And it's saying perf per area power. So like.
Also the frequency adjustment. For the same power? Yeah.
I guess, but like that slide never really made sense to me.
This is a slide
to pick here.
So, just to explain this slide and put it in context, Orion, which is the Qualcomm chip, and Zen 5, the AMD chip, if you deal with core-to-core latency, L3 to L3, both of them have what looks like a bug, which gives you double the value you should expect. With Qualcomm, it's when you're going from a 4-core cluster to a 4-core cluster. In Zen 5, it's when you're going from CCD to CCD.
Or CCX to CCX instructions.
Yeah.
But okay, so here's my bone to pick here. So those Strix point numbers are from us. They literally used our review and took our numbers. But for the DRAM latency, for their own numbers, they use IDA. You cannot compare our test and IDA. Now, I know for a fact that they likely ran our benchmark on Lunar Lake. They have these numbers, because in the hot chip slide, I am almost certain that they used our tests. So they have that data.
Robert referenced a GitHub repo that enables the core-to-core tests.
No. The core-to-core tests are different. Those actually line up. I'm talking about the memory latency, so the DRAM latency.
No, I know, but I'm saying Robert in the briefing referenced
yes,
the GitHub,
it's in the end note.
The chips and cheese.
It's a different C2C latency.
Okay.
Test. The one from Hot Chips is likely ours, but they used a different one for these sets of numbers, which is weird, but whatever.
Yeah.
Different.
So,
but that DRAM latency number for Strix Point on that is from us, and the Meteor Lake number I believe is from Tech Power Up. I don't know what they use, so I cannot speak to that number, but I can speak to that Strix Point number. And I can speak to their DRAM latency number being from IDA, which is not ideal.
IDA runs it at a fixed stride, don't they? A fixed depth.
They aren't real. They aren't true random.
Right. Yeah. It's also a depth they assume that will always be DRAM.
Yeah, which is a bad assumption to make.
Yeah, because really you should be a fixed depth from when L3 transitions to DRAM because of the TLB size.
Well, not just that. Right? Assuming a fixed... So I guess you could assume like a 12 or 16 gigabyte point out at the edge that is likely to be memory, but... You should really have the full spectrum so that you can see that transition as a person and determine sort of.
So IDA actually has that test. It's very well hidden. A lot of people don't know that test exists in IDA, but they do have it.
Fixed function in the chat says Tech Power uses IDA. Okay, so that I guess is a fair is. I hesitate to use the word a fair comparison because IDA's test is borked, but like on Strix, it completely doesn't. It doesn't even know what it is, which is funny. At least not on my system.
The thing is, because the graph goes like up in steps, you need to make sure you're not in the middle of that rise, and where DRAM latency. It rises and then curves off to, essentially goes asymptotic at some point. And the point is that data point should be in the asymptotic region, not in sort of like the hump just before it. And without a full spectrum, it's, let's continue. Thread Director gets, some updates as well. Basically it says if software's got the hints for the processor, it will immediately go to P-cores. Though otherwise, if it doesn't have any hints at all, it will start on an E-core. But because the E-cores are all on the same die this time, and there's not like a low-power E-core on a separate die, it should be a lot smoother with context switching. And then we get onto the P cores. This is single-threaded performance here. Qualcomm's big gripe of the day was the fact that they didn't use the 84 version of Snapdragon X Elite for stuff like this, which should actually give I don't know, maybe 5% improvement in performance.
My argument there is that you can only get it in one laptop.
Yeah, but it's a laptop chip.
Yeah.
Right.
Using the 8, because I think they used the Surface, one of the Surfaces, for the 80 comparison, which, okay, that's fair. Like, I actually told AMD this, that you could have used the 80, and while Qualcomm would argue with you that you should use the 84, my counterpoint to that would be, well, the 84 is only available in one laptop. And the 80 is the more common sort of chip. So
the
84 can also is the laptop with the 84 is also only 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is not great.
And then they go into this kind of weird slide talking about performance per thread. This is a multi-threaded workload divided by the number of threads limited by power. Basically means IPC and frequency are better when you have fewer cores. This is a very weird set of data.
Is spec 2017 int and copy. So
which means it means you're also running 8 versions of the test versus 14, or 8 versions of the test running 22.
But so. I would argue that really you shouldn't be running 14 or 22 threads for Meteor Lake, because you shouldn't really load up the LPE cores.
Yeah.
On a workload like this.
It's dragging it down a bit.
Yeah.
So, and this is the graph that's actually going to be picked apart by everyone. This is multi-threaded performance per watt. So the idea here is that you have total package power, so not the idle normalized power that Qualcomm uses at the bottom, and then the relative performance for multi-threaded compute, which again is this spec-int multi-thread test. And the argument here is if you load up, if you use Meteor Lake, which is the Ultra 7 165U, at different power points you can get 3 dots in essentially a straight line, almost perfect scaling. AMD is at the 35 watt, Apple M3 is on the 20 watt, and this line is the Intel Core 9 288V, which is the 32 gig version. It's the highest SKU, the highest everything, the highest graphics. Qualcomm is out here at 50 watts, and they're saying 40% lower power for the same performance, which should actually be it should actually be like 6% lower power, 50 watts to 20 watts. So, but the thing is, it's also showing that Meteor Lake Ultra 7 165H, which is 22 threads, at 27.5 watts, is faster than Lunar Lake. And I think that's because it's 22 threads. It's also, that's 8 performance cores, isn't it? Or 6?
Yeah, it's 6. It's 6 performance, 8 E, and then 2 LPE.
The thing is,
it's a weird line. Like, I get what they're trying to do here. They're trying to say efficiency, 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 but it is a bit of a weird.
As I said at the beginning of this, Lunar Lake was designed for 9 watts, so really it's down the bottom where it's meant to be, the biggest difference.
Personally, I see this more as a 15 watt chip. 15 watt plus minus 5.
We'll get to the SKU list because it explains. This 50 watt number from Qualcomm. Now, one thing I've been seeing with Qualcomm's devices, and we've seen this because the reviews have been all over the place. It seems that some chips are binned better than others, as in like there are sub bins. You may have an 80-100, but if you compare it with somebody with the same device with also an 80-100 under the same workload, you may be running several watts difference because of the binning inside a SKU. I've not seen anyone literally just take 5 or 10 of the same device and do the testing on this, but that's kind of the traction I'm seeing, right? So the fact that this is the 50 watt version makes me think that Intel may have instrumented several and just picked the worst.
So, well, here's the thing. If that's total package power, then that will roughly, give or take, correspond with the 42 to 45 watts we saw when we idolized power, or when we normalized power, excuse me. So,
but you had one SKU, right? You had one chip.
Yeah, we had one chip.
Really, this needs somebody like a Steve from Gamers Nexus or a Tech Power Up or whatever, just to get hands-on with 5 of the same SKU or 10 of the same SKU ideally, and just say, how does the power... Linus did 10 desktop CPUs, right? 10 Ryzen desktop, and said, how are they different? Nobody's done that with laptops yet, so it's we'll have to see.
In part because laptops are harder. And I don't just
if you have if you have the same thing and you can put them in the same testing environment, so this also means test at the same time of day.
Yeah.
You know, put them in a temperature controlled chamber. So we'll see. And then productivity on Procyon and some other quote unquote industry tests. Handbrake over here is hardware encoding with native ISA. So
that's I when I saw hardware encoding, the reason why they're doing that is because I know that Handbrake will use AVX512, and if they just used native ISA, they would just...
Well, this isn't an AVX512 chip. It's got VNNI.
No, but it would look... VNNI doesn't have anything to do with Handbrake. VNNI is AI stuff.
Yeah, as Fixed Function says, it's harder to get a hold of 10 of the same laptop for testing. Partners won't seed more than 2 or 3 at a time. The fact that you get 2 or 3 of the same thing would be amazing, but yes.
Yeah.
That is pretty much universal. You'd have to go out and buy these. So you may get ones from different batches as well. So it's and then they're saying gen on gen IPC. These are the numbers I think we saw at Tech Day. And then against GPU XE2 again. We've kind of been over this a little bit. And gen on gen gaming performance 31%. That's not to be sniffed at. This is peak versus peak, so they're not making a statement on power here, FPS per watt or anything. However, that's all the standard tests. 23 games did not run on Qualcomm. So
now I question this slide because I've personally run Cyberpunk 2077 on Qualcomm. So how that did not run, I don't know. Again, I'm not ascribing malice. I'm just I've seen this run so this is Minecraft Java Edition, which I've been reliably informed does run on Qualcomm, but a lot of mods don't work. So it should, in theory, work. How they got DNR, I don't know.
Yeah. This is also the 84, so this is the top SKU, the book 4.
Yeah.
So because Intel presented this the day before Qualcomm did their press conference, I kind of half expected Qualcomm to go really heavy on the fact that, actually we can run this, this, and this, and this, or this is around the corner. It doesn't. Intel's, for some reasons has stopped saying when this data was collected, so it could have been collected a month ago.
I think they say that in the endnotes. They should.
No, they will do. It's just not on the slide where it should be easy. Yeah. I don't want to go to slide 120 to find it. Yeah, and for the games that do run, they're claiming 68%. To be honest, I see Qualcomm in graphics where Intel was when Arc first launched. Right? In some games today, Arc is 400% better. Same hardware, just better software. So, yeah. And then versus AMD, they're claiming plus 16%. The big one there being, I think, Minecraft, where AMD has the big lead, and some of these top-end games, which are more CPU bound, I guess, like Grand Theft Auto 5. So yeah, they're going for world's best built-in GPU. No FPS per watt numbers, which I think may be a bit surprising. They had some demos at the event showing power running Dota 2. Yeah. They had preferential package power for Dota 2, so yeah. And then so the fact there's XMX in this GPU means that they can do XeSS, and they had some demos for that. And they're saying that with XeSS, so all the gaming benchmarks you've seen are 1080p medium average FPS. This is 540p with upscaling. And they're saying, they can get 60% faster than previous generation. And you notice Arc has a name here. They're calling it the 140V. And there'll also be the 130V. We'll get to the SKU stack in a few. Immersive gaming, they're saying with ray tracing. Qualcomm doesn't do ray tracing. And this is functional ray.
Technically not true. They do. So in DX12 they don't, but in Vulkan they can. Like the units are there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because technically Qualcomm doesn't support all of DirectX 12 Ultimate. For the Adreno X1. So things like ray tracing through DirectX 12 Ultimate isn't supported, but it is in Vulkan. So yeah, Media Engine. The new thing here is VBC, which is the new 8K 60 standard essentially, and they say they've got built-in video scalers as well. Again, another issue here is why use the 78 from Qualcomm rather than the 84. One might argue because it should be offload, it shouldn't matter, but it is what it is. And then the graphics summary. A big number here, 67 TOPS of Int 8 performance. And then we get to AI. The magical words. Your favorite, George.
Okay. This slide made me go, huh?
So to explain this slide, right? They went out to their partners, their software vendors, and said basically, how important do you see all of these blocks this year and next year? And what they're saying is they think that between this year and next year, the CPU is going to be deprioritized 5% and the NPU will be prioritized 5%. Thing is, this is averages. What I want to see is I bet you there's some outliers there. Like gaming companies, maybe 15% CPU, 85% GPU, 0% NPU. But then like an AI upscaler, maybe 5,590. It's, yeah. Again, based on internal Intel research, yeah, good luck getting the data. And the whole thing here is that one thing Intel did well in this presentation is that they didn't continually say NPU, 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 NPU. When they spoke about AI, they said some of it will run on NPU, a lot of it will run on GPU, and then you've also got the CPU for backup. So their AI story is transitioning away from an NPU story to a SoC story. Now, bearing in mind, you can't have one AI kernel go across all three. As in, you can't split one kernel up into three. You can write three kernels that are called either sequentially or asynchronously to do different parts of the workload, but you have to still compile it for that target. So, addition of VNI AVX on the CPU, and XMX and DP4A on the GPU. And their argument here is that on the NPU, it's the most power efficient and it's faster than Qualcomm. But if you want super fast, then you go to the GPU with FP16, which is going to be the more accurate model. This sort of stuff, if you're wondering what W8 A16 means, that means 8-bit weights, 16-bit activations. So they're reducing the memory bandwidth requirements slightly on weights. Again, an argument here, why use the 78? Why not use the 84? Because I bet you that time comes down a bit. So
it shouldn't. They are in theory identical NPUs.
Yeah.
With the same memory system, so in theory they should be identical. Whether that's true in reality, I don't know.
The fact that some of this data is on 78, some of this data is on 80, some of this data is on 84 does make it a little bit weird.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing about UL Procyon, this AI benchmark, they're all deciding to go after. Here they're saying that AMD doesn't actually support it. I would struggle to think that that's true.
I haven't tried, so I don't know. I don't have the whatever that test is. I should probably contact UL for it, but
the UL AI. So this is the computer vision test, which they say doesn't run on AMD, but the image generation does.
Because they're running it on
but the image generation. Well, so this is the whole thing. Intel was saying, look, this is the results from the test. We haven't told you what it runs on, right? This is just what you get from the chip, regardless. And then, Geekbench AI, which I had a lot of questions for that team because it's,
I'm really gonna question that CPU score. Like, that doesn't track in my head.
I think they said they used the framework and the options that gave the best result. Because you can do Onyx, you can do DirectML, you can do WinML.
Well, no,
I've run it.
Just based off what I know of the two architecture the three architectures here, that FP16 number seems suspicious to me. That seems suspicious to me. Like,
they're both 2.9K.
Well, not just that. The fact that you have this massive dip between FP32 and FP16, like that doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when you consider that again.
Oh, I see. The AMD test, for example, goes down with FP16.
Also Qualcomm has a drop. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And the whole thing against again the 78 is that not only do they have higher performance, but they actually support more features, even though they're only included 12 here. And that they're actually doing work themselves to enable AI PC to do AI. All the standard language models, some multimodal stuff, marketing. Is it catching up on my side? standard numbers we just saw. And then we get into the software. I'm not going to spend too much on the software. They're just doing a lot. They've been at it for a long while.
Yeah, and a lot of that ecosystem is just x86.
Yeah, well, I mean, for some reason, this machine thinks I'm like 10 slides behind, so yeah, don't go to German hotels expecting internet. The one thing I wanted to mention when my screen actually catches up with what's on display is nope, I can't even go 3 slides ahead without it crapping out. Good fun.
Well, I think sort of the story here is software, right? Software runs on. Intel has a very strong software ecosystem.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to find out where I have this locally, just so I know which slide to go to straight away. Intel Ether. For some reason, this system overheats just by network traffic.
Are you trying to go to the SKU list slide?
No, I want to show something off first before we get there. Come on, show me.
Do you remember?
No, I'm not you. I'm.
Because I have the slide pulled up on my computer, so I can find.
I literally loaded it up, and it loaded up twice. So I closed one, but it refused to load the second. Yeah, no. If I can find which slide I want to go to. So benchmark numbers, DNR. They had some companies come in. Platform experiences. Okay, let's go to slide 75. Platform experiences. Yeah, so Wi-Fi 7 is going to be integrated. Why has it gone back? It's not accepting when I go forward a slide now. That's great.
Is this the multi-engine security?
No, it should be leading platform connectivity.
Okay, so that's actually up on the integrated Wi-Fi 7.
No. What slide are you seeing, George?
I'm seeing the leading platform connectivity, blazing speed and efficiency. Is that the correct one that you want?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that is up on the stream.
Yeah. So integrated Wi-Fi 7. There was a misinterpretation of what it meant by 5 gig here. It doesn't mean 5 gigahertz. It means 5 gigabit.
Mm-hmm.
Because
5 gigahertz was.
Yeah,
it's already standard.
Thunderbolt 4 is built in, and all Lunar Lake laptops will have at least 2 Type-C ports that are Thunderbolt 4 capable.
That's nice.
New Bluetooth 5.4 that's over PCIe, so that's actually an add-in chip. And then all Intel solutions will be killer networking, for as much as people love it. New security engine, which among other things I think supports Pluton. And then we also have next generation Intel Evo, which is their premium tier. They go through extra testing, verification. There is the one new thing here is a camera quality test. So you have to have a minimum camera in your Intel Evo. Intel Evo isn't business. It's what they used to call Project Athena. It just means it's a higher certification process for a better experience, basically. Now, the interesting thing about this slide, it says introducing the new Intel Evo edition, is walk away lock. Have you ever heard of this before?
Is this where you walk away and it like locks the computer?
So that's what I think it means, but I've never heard about Intel talk about productizing it. They've mentioned it before in the sense of this is something we're looking into, but they've never said, because Lattice had a demo with their FPGAs saying that they could do it at low power. This was weird, the fact that it hadn't been mentioned before, but it's a few comments in the chat about how Evo is a worthless made-up verification. I'm running an Evo laptop. I don't want to think how bad my experience would be if it wasn't Evo. It has good battery life, but there are some distinct issues that need to be fixed. I'm waiting on my Lunar Lake device. And they're also implementing Evo for accessories. So accessories that have gone through further verification for Evo support. Here's sort of like a high level overview. There's another couple of slides that look very similar. So memory, the top SKU will have 32 gigs. It says 2-channel. Because it's LPDDR, technically it's 8-channel, 16-bit, which means it's a 128-bit memory bus. I really need to standardize talking about memory width interfaces,
buses, not channels.
Yeah, because channel historically for desktop means 64-bit. However, in LPDDR it means 16-bit, and then with DDR5 it changed because now a 64-bit is actually 232s. Yeah.
So it should just be 32 gigabytes, 128-bit memory bus.
And the thing is, we do that for GPUs all the time.
Yeah.
So imagine saying, "Oh, I have a 12-channel GPU." Yeah, which is well, 768-bit bus or whatever. So
actually,
it's all going to be LPDDR.
GDDR has been what? 16-bit? 16-bit for a while?
I'm using the colloquial definition of channel.
Okay.
See?
Yeah.
Well,
then do you have ECC on that channel? Because then it could be 72-bit or 80-bit.
Yep. So it's LPDDR5X only. So maximum 32 gigs, and it's all the tops. The I/O. So because this is a new product swim lane, there's a new a new reset on what you get in I/O. It has only 4 PCIe 5 lanes and 5 PCIe 4 lanes. Why just to make it complex, it's 4 of 5 and 5 of 4.
Yeah.
I asked the question to Josh Newman and Robert Halleck and said, which one of those is going to be for the SSD and which one of those is going to be for the discrete GPU, for the devices that have a discrete GPU added? And the answer I got was they expect that the devices with discrete GPU will run on the faster interface. So if you get a device with a discrete GPU, your SSD may be slower.
But okay, here's my counterpoint to that. What PCIe 5, other than more threads and the data center chips, which we don't care about in this context,
5090.
What PCIe 5?
The stuff that's not out yet. But also, this technically is Thunderbolt. Yes. You could do GPU over Thunderbolt. So
yeah, you could. Oh God, I just had a cursed idea of internal Thunderbolt, of using an internal Thunderbolt as your PCIe. Using one of the 3 as your connection. Ooh.
Yes. Yeah. An email just came in that we'll talk about in a second.
Okay.
And so here is the SKU stack. Let's see if we can minimize this layout.
Yeah.
Dom, can you go to the Shift 7 picture-in-picture layout, because for some reason it's not clicking on mine. Oh, now Now the clicks are chasing up. No, you've just taken it off the stage.
No, yes.
Yeah, okay, that's where I wanted it. Okay, you destaged it. So yeah, here's the SKU stack. Hopefully it's coming through full resolution. So all these numbers, Ultra 9, Ultra 7, Ultra 5, they're all 4 P-cores, 4 E-cores.
That I like. I like that.
Right. So the number, you've got 2, 8, 2, 6. 2 is the generation. 8, 6, 5, 3, 2 is where it sits in the stack. If it's got a 6, it means that the memory capacity is 16 gigabytes. If it's got an 8, if it ends in an 8, then it's the 32 gigabyte SKU. And it's the 32 gigabyte SKU because 6 plus 2 is 8. Yeah, that doesn't make sense either.
Yeah,
Okay. So, but basically, if it ends in an 8, it's the 32 gig SKU. 8, yeah. So 8 is 32, and 6 is 16.
Yeah.
Okay. So maximum turbo frequency 5.1. Notice it's not giving the base frequencies here, so we don't know the base frequencies.
So that is in fact up on the Intel website. I can pull those up if you want me to.
Okay. Yeah. Go for the 288V. I've got a feed. Yeah. ARC now has a name. You have the 140V or the 130V. I've got a feeling they should have called it the 240 and 230 because it's XE2.
Yeah, that would make sense. So the base clock for the P cores is 3.3, and same for the E cores on the 288.
Okay, and go for the 226V.
226.
Which is the bottom SKU if people are looking at it.
226. So that's going to be 2.1 gigahertz on both the P and E cores.
So it looks like the base frequency for both P and E are the same across the stack. Yeah, and fixed function confirms it. Yeah, fixed function confirms it. There is a change in the LLC. We didn't speak about where the cache is on the core. But yeah, the LLC changes between 5 and 7.
So this LLC is not the SLC, that 8 megabyte memory side cache. That LLC is the LLC for the P cores, the traditional L3, not the memory side cache. The 2 different caches, just to make clear.
So going from 3 megs per core down to 2 megs per core.
Yeah.
And then XE, so if you've got an 8 XE core, you have 140V. If you've got a 7, it's a 130V. And then you've got a slight frequency adjustment through the stack. That's why at the top it's 67 versus 64 when you get to the bottom of the 7s, and then the rest is 53. NPU. NPU is between 40 and 48. The reason why 40 is needed is that means it's Copilot Plus. Simple as. Memory speed is consistent, and they put in mega transfers per second. Amazing. And then we get into the power. So there is a base power and a turbo power. However, this is the notebook market, and the vendors can do whatever they want. And the turbo frequency on the CPU and the GPU is dependent on the maximum turbo power being supported.
Yeah.
So if your device only supports 30 watts peak and 17 min, you may only see 4.4, for example. It is what it is. And date is September 24th. You can pre-order today. So while Qualcomm had 22 designs, Intel is expecting 80. And if you really wanted a Jing Dong Lunar Lake laptop, then here you go.
I was having a sip of my coffee when you said that.
Yeah, so it's we'll see. It's 30 global retailers. The different region may vary. And here's the big slide. Let's go back to that one if it works. Yeah. So they're calling the new NPU NPU4 because of the updates to the architecture in the NPU. They've retconned Meteor Lake to NPU3, just so people are aware. Technically, due to the acquisition, it's actually called 2.7 internally, but we recommended them call it 3, not 2.7, because what was coming after 2.7 was 4, which is what we see now. But yeah, this is all the numbers that you can take or leave. And then we had Q&A with these interesting folks. And then we get into the appendix, and then slides of stuff.
Yeah.
And that is Lunar. That is Lunar Lake. I expect samples to be shipped next week. And then, and then reviews on the 24th. Okay. And just so to bring up Lasseberg's what node, N3B for all the tiles. However, the interposer and the packaging.
N3B for the compute
tile. Yeah, that's right.
N6 for the I/O platform controller die, and then the base tile I believe is Intel 16.
And the packaging is Intel as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so Intel still has a hand in the manufacturing of the chip. It's just the leading edge node stuff isn't theirs. And that's because that decision was made several years ago based on their predictions of where they thought Intel 4 and Intel 3 were going to be. If they knew Intel 3 was going to be where it is today, I highly expect this would have been on Intel 3 instead. So the big thing that wasn't mentioned in the slides that I think is relevant to us as a community is that this is Intel's first commercial product using Cadence and Synopsys industry standard tools, not their own internal stuff. And we'll get into why that's important after we speak about Lunar Lake, because I want to speak about IFS and whatever. So
I think I've just about wrapped up my I think we've wrapped up Lunar Lake. I think we should
Lunar
IFS unless you have anything else, because I don't.
Yeah. Not really. The event, like I say, I two things Intel did well in the presentation is they spoke about Copilot a bit, but not a lot. And that's because Microsoft and Copilot are having issues and whatever. They recalled Recall, and then some of the features are coming out November-ish and may not be on launch day, that sort of thing. And the other thing they did well is that when it came to the AI discussion, they didn't go NPU, 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 NPU. They said, look, AI is going to be a distributed workload. Some is going to use NPU, a lot of it is going to use GPU, and that makes sense. It's and to be honest, there was some good discussions, all in. Let's touch briefly on the Qualcomm announcement. I actually did a massive Twitter thread. So during Intel's presentation on this, I wasn't feeling too well, so I skipped it out. And then my hotel Wi-Fi was so bad I couldn't even stream it afterwards without pausing and letting buffer, then pausing and let it buffer, then pausing and let it buffer. So that was... I was told, though, that they made an active decision to try and say AI less.
Good decision. Whoever made that decision, good decision.
Good decision. So, but I was well enough to attend the Qualcomm keynote today, so there's a big Twitter thread about it. I don't have any slides to show, but they launched the Snapdragon X Plus 8 core. So there was a 12 core and a 10 core that was using the Hamoa die. This new 8 core is new silicon, so it's called the POA die. It's so fewer cores, only 8 cores, which means a slight reduction in cache as well. The GPU is a bit smaller, but the single core frequency is on par. The NPU is the same performance, and the battery life is the same. The point of this chip is that, and I think it's coming in November, is that most laptops are bought in the they said, actually no, business class laptop average selling price, so this is a business to business, is $900. This chip is designed to serve the $700 to $900 market, which is fair enough. They also announced that there's going to be sort of like a little mid-gen refresh. Turbo is going to be, they're going to have new SKUs with Turbo on the 10 core and the 8 core, I think they said in the 8 core, in Q1. So there's going to be a mid-gen refresh.
I'll be honest, they probably should have had that Turbo to start with, especially on the X Elite SKUs, in my opinion.
Well, it is on the 12 core, isn't it? So,
no, not all the 12 cores. So the 78 does not have Turbo.
Yeah, no, but it is on the 84, and it's only 2 cores out of the 12.
So it's on the 84 and the 80, but not on the 78, which sucks because the platforms that can actually use the MT performance of the 78, like it's weird. Like a lot of the laptops with the 80 in it aren't thermally capable of cooling at full load, so they end up with lower MT performance than the 78. But it's weird. It comes down to the power binning, I think, as well. Yeah.
If they can tighten that up for a refresh, then it could be effective, and I've told them so. So, and that launch was actually relatively straightforward. A straightforward set of announcements and a keynote. And they even took Q&A, which they don't normally do after a keynote presentation, but there we are. I do have an update on the dev kits for Snapdragon X Elite, and I want to bring up my email here just so I get the right quotes. So Qualcomm initially said that the Snapdragon X Elite developer kit would be, I think, July 17th for $800, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments.
Materialized as far as I know. That never.
Sorry. $900, and people have been asking, where is it? It never came out. And I got in touch with a Qualcomm spokesperson, and I said, I'll go through the Q&A, and I'll just say verbatim. I really should write this up so people have a written access. I asked, any update on the status of the X Elite-based dev kits? Response, developer interest in the Snapdragon dev kit for Windows has been tremendous and speaks to the industry's excitement to develop cutting-edge applications for Snapdragon X series. Developers who ordered units will receive them in September. So a renewed commitment to September. This is from Qualcomm and not Arrow, where you may have put your pre-order. Number 2, right? They have, in a number of ways, said that the reason for the delay was due to a HDMI issue. And I said, and the response about that was, we encountered an issue with the HDMI port when manufacturing this device. To ensure no further delays, we have decided to provide a USB-C to HDMI dongle. And so they're essentially removing the HDMI port. We look forward to seeing what incredible apps and experiences developers produce utilizing this device. Okay, so this could be a number of things, and we can happily speculate whether it was a external HDMI driver issue, whether it's an internal silicon HDMI issue, which it shouldn't be because there are devices in the market with HDMI chip
on this right now. PCB.
Yeah, and for this they're using an external OEM or an ODM, right? Mm-hmm. And they're just using it Snapdragon, right? So, and they also said, to counteract this, we have lowered the price by 10% to $810 and offering partial refunds to early, purchasers. People have put in their pre-orders and the money's been taken away because Arrow, for some reason, when you pre-order stuff, takes your money straight away as the deposit. I know I've seen a few things, a few people saying, Qualcomm's getting rich off the interest of my money because they've had it for 3 months. It's not Qualcomm, it's Arrow.
It's Arrow.
It's distributor.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and just to clarify things, instead of the HDMI being on the device, they're adding in a Type-C to HDMI converter. So you're doing DP over Type-C converted to HDMI. And that'll be bundled in the box.
That's not crunchy at all.
Or you can just have DP over Type-C anyway.
Yeah.
You can get Type-C to DP cables. They're a dime a dozen. And then you use a DP to HDMI converter. They're just trying to put it all in one, because they know HDMI is quite prevalent. And is there an official update on when the units will be shipped? September. So the thing is, imagine in part of my mind, I think Qualcomm said, how many units are we going to sell? 2,000, maybe 5,000. And I think the response has been somewhere near 20, right? Numbers not exact, but kind of that scale. And it's like, oh crap, we have to engage with our ODM to go build more. And then you get the first batch through, and you've done all the design work, and then you find that 2 out of these 10 that we've taken from this batch don't do HDMI 2.1, some of the features properly. We now have to go debug this issue. And then there's debugging that takes a month, that takes 6 weeks, and it's like, maybe we can't find the issue, so we just have to cut HDMI off everything, or we do know the issue but we can't fix it in time, and we've already made so many units that we have to go back and essentially what they're doing with the chassis is literally removing the HDMI port, but they also have to remold the chassis, the plastic chassis. So you don't have HDMI there. They can't exactly just put a sticker over it and say warranty void if removed. They're actually doing it properly. So that's what's taking the extra time. If at some point they fix the HDMI issue, there may be a V2 with HDMI, and they can repurpose everything that's been manufactured so far. It's coming. And I know people like Jeff Geerling and Wendell Wilson, and us, we want to get hold of these dev kits because usually they're designed to be thermally unconstrained as well, so we get the best performance. It's almost like a reference platform, and it is because that's what developers are using as a reference, not $600 8-core X Pluses, which we're coming to market soon. It's designed to make them accessible. So I wanted to update on that. It's worth perhaps a fuller article, given that this seems to be this is news that I got 10 minutes before starting the stream. So, and with that, let's get to IFS, or technically IF, right? They technically, it's called Intel Foundry, not Intel Foundry Services.
Yeah. I still call it IFS because if you say IF, people are like, "Wait, did you just need to capitalize if?" Like if you're writing in Discord or something. So I still call it IFS, but it's technically Intel Foundries. But
yeah. So there's been a lot of discussion this week and last because Lit Bhutan, who was on the board of directors, left. Intel's last quarter wasn't great. And that's putting it
mildly.
And the whole push towards foundry and products has had investors since it was announced saying, when are they going to split? When are they going to split? When are they going to split? You know, where's the chance to make a quick buck because they split? And so there's been a lot of discussion about, well, hey, can it be done? And there are technical reasons why I'm of the opinion no. At least not yet.
Yeah, at least not yet. And I think you sort of touched on this. The EDA tools that the industry relies on are not quite up to speed on Intel nodes yet. So that's Synopsys. They're working on it, but it's not there yet. As far as I,
it's a bit more nuanced, right? So Intel has fabs for Intel 22, 14, 10, 7, 4, and 3 today. Most of them are in the 14, 10, 7 range. Now, since time immemorial, Intel's manufacturing has worked based on building chips using Intel-developed in-house software. So in the industry, we call that EDA, Electronic Design Automation. And the big companies here are Cadence, Synopsys, Siemens. So if you want to go build a chip at TSMC or Samsung or Global Foundries or UMC or SMIC or Tower or whoever, you go to Synopsys and you say, can I have the 130 nanometer IP for RF for Wi-Fi 5? Because I want to build a Wi-Fi 5 module in 130 nanometer on Tower. And they say, yeah, here's the software. Here's how much the software costs. Here's how the license costs. Here's what you need, and there we go. Intel, for their own process node, for their own products, has never done that. It means that when they went and built Skylake, even Sandy Bridge, right, or even before then, they had custom Intel tools to develop, test, synthesize, verify, emulate, do the whole chip design process on Intel-only tools. And that's what made Intel Foundry fail the first time. Because if a company wanted in, they weren't allowed to use Intel tools. It was always like Intel it wasn't a foundry, it was like an ASIC design business for the Intel process node. Right. So
interesting.
That's one of the reasons also why it screwed up when they first did Foundry for 10 nanometer, and 10 nanometer was late. With Intel 4 and Intel 3, and to a certain extent Intel 16, which is really 22 FFL slightly changed, and 20A and 18A, these are all nodes that Intel has designed for 99.995% industry standard tools. So Lunar Lake is built using Cadence and Synopsys tools. Sierra Forest, Granite Rapids, Clearwater Forest, all using industry standard EDA tools. That's why those nodes can be enabled for Foundry. And Intel's only productizing Intel 3 and 18A for Foundry. But that's more an IP design reason why. But for 14, 10, and 7, you have to use Intel software to build on those nodes right now. So if Intel spun out the fabs, the only customers for those fabs would be Intel, which would mean a massive wafer supply agreement. Right, which is one of the ways where it could work. Intel has announced that it is engaging with UMC, and UMC is designing a development kit. We call it a PDK, Process Development Kit, that can use the tools for Intel 14 on a new design node called Intel UMC 12. So it means UMC customers and Intel customers can use the 14 tools for a node called Intel UMC 12. That is scheduled for a 2027 initial version 1 of the PDK. So until that point, the only people who can use those fabs are Intel. And right now they're underutilized. And when a fab is underutilized, you're losing money at the rate of hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per second.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's just how much money. The earthquake technically shut down like a TSMC fab for 4 hours. That cost 3-point-something million in lost, or 30-something million in lost revenue. Right? We're talking that amount of money. Designing PDKs is hard. It takes years to develop a process node, right? And the whole point of Intel UMC 12 is that UMC has tons of customers that could take advantage of a 12 nanometer node from Intel. And Intel may have customers who can use it, but can work with UMC if they need to. And, it's that sort of thing. I want to bring up Josh's quote here about, so how did it work with AMD spinning off Global Foundries then? Global Foundries used industry standard EDA tools. Right?
Yeah, so they never had this issue.
Yeah, it meant that everybody could come in and say, I want to use Global Foundries because I already use the Cadence workflow. So the thing is, if they do spin out into separate businesses with separate CEOs and whatever, and they have a wafer supply agreement, imagine if you're Intel product and you say, actually, we can't meet the wafer supply agreement this month. And so the foundry then says, well, hang on, that's $100 million fine. And product come back saying, well, the reason why we're not making the chips is we don't have $100 million. You've just made us go bankrupt. And then foundry is going to say, oh, crap, that means our utilization is 0.
Yeah.
Because we've made our only customer who can use what we have bankrupt.
Yeah. It's an Ouroboros of spiraling at that point.
The only split that would make sense is if it was a split designed to mothball the fabs or the equipment, right? As in like a CFO sell-off,
which
it's a yard. Well, it's a yard sale.
Yeah, and the mothballing of the fabs would never happen because the U.S. government would never allow that to happen.
I've been speaking to
reasons.
Yeah, I've been speaking to a few people on this, and it seems to be 50-50 whether the US government would step in.
Really?
So, yeah, as in, is it as strategic as it needs to be? Because how much of the industrial military complex relies specifically on Intel? Because all the packaging isn't in the US. No, sorry, correction. Sorry, packaging is in Arizona, New Mexico. And they do have like ramp C contracts, and but the argument was made to me that if you look at the main semiconductor companies used by the industrial military complex, Intel isn't even in top 5.
No,
it's more like TI and NXP and Infineon and those sorts of things.
Global Foundries.
Yeah. So, if maybe there's appropriate alternatives. Now you could say, well, you could sell the fabs to Nvidia. They could absorb the costs. Yeah, can you imagine?
No.
Intel has a lot of IP in their nodes. They also have immense value in the people in the TD team, technology development team, because 18A sounds to be shipping up quite well. Pat Gelsinger just announced that the defect rate on 18A is at 0.4.
Below 0.4 was the quote.
Yeah, so that means that the physical defect rate of a chip is 0.4 defects per square centimeter. Which I worked out on a 300mm wafer is about 250 defects. Right? And for a manufacturing node this far out, like at least 3/4 from start of ramp. That's about where it should be, right?
Mm-hmm.
They say they're doing test chips. That's the perfect D0 to do test chips.
Yeah.
Do you want to know the D0 for Cannon Lake test chips?
Oh, I don't even want to imagine
that.
Because
because it's a bigger number than you're thinking of.
It's probably considering what they had to do to get those chips to work, it's probably at the beyond 1 range, which is insane to even talk about. It's probably
we guess this offline, but TSMC's D0 for 7 and 5 nanometer is about 0.07, which is about 45 defects per wafer. So we're getting there, and so as long as the performance and power is fine, and everything that's coming out that it says that it is it going to be competitive against what TSMC has to offer when it's ready? Well, we'll see on that. When I interviewed Pat back in February on our one-on-one, I literally asked him, "Are you betting the company on 18A?" And he says, "Yes." Right? This has to work. The thing is, having a working process is one thing, having foundry customers is another. So that's what they're working on right now. And I did see in the chat somebody said there is news that Broadcom wasn't impressed by 18A. So we'll see on that. But they've said they've got a prepayment for a bunch of 18A chips. They're working with at least one big hyperscaler, and they're talking to the rest. Right?
I believe it was announced that the one hyperscaler was Microsoft. I believe that's public. Off the top of my head, I'm not 100, but I think that's either like 90% confirmed or has been publicly announced, one of the two.
So Transitory says, would you buy the whole complete foundry business for $0 just to consume all assets and IP? You can shuttle the nodes which don't have EDA. Yes, though it's worth more than 0.
Yeah. Just the IP and assets alone are worth.
People are saying, Intel needs money. What can it do? It still has the IPO of Altera. It could just up and sell it privately for like $20 billion, and that covers OPEX for at least another year and a half.
Well, they also have Mobileye too. They could also spin off Mobileye as a
it's already been partially IPO'd, and Mobileye's next generation products are all on Intel. So if it's apparently there's a board meeting in a couple of weeks at Intel, sans lit boo, where they're going to be looking into this, because Pat wants to double down on his bets, because if he doesn't, then he's definitely lost. And with a good 18A process, all you need is a good product line as well, and then Intel products meets Foundry, and you get the benefit of reaping double margins again. So it's
so in the chat, Dom is like, quote, "Heck, they could IPO the graphics division. It's in a much better position than it was a year ago. They'll never IPO the graphics division. That's not something I ever see them doing."
Personally, when needs must. No. To be honest, out of everything, the top of the stack to go would be Altera.
Yeah.
Don't forget, Altera is an Intel Foundry customer.
Yes.
All their chips are built on 10 and 7 right now. Yeah. So, or at least all the new chips.
But the GPU division is, I would argue, actually very integral to Intel's core business. That being, laptops, right? Because all laptops need an iGPU nowadays, or desktop.
hang on. It's important to recognize that when he's saying GPU division, he probably means the discrete side of the business, not the integrated. Because the IP is the same.
Separate like that. Yeah, the IPs. Yeah. You wouldn't. I don't see how you could IPO it like that in my head, but yeah.
It's also important to realize that they don't have any CHIPS Act money yet, which I believe is 8-point-something billion in cash and then 11-point-something billion in loans. Yeah. I think nobody's been given CHIPS Act money yet. It's been, reserved, and they're going through the motions of all the regulatory compliance.
Yeah.
So that last thing I read is that the government has stipulations for using the money, for accepting it. And Intel is arguing that some of the rules they've been following for so long they should be exempt from in the future, or they've already invested X amount of billions into local economies. They shouldn't need to be held to investing another X amount of billion to do it. Their argument is saying your stipulations we already did in the last 5 years, so they shouldn't be new. This is a problem. Is the grant for a job well done, or is it a grant for investment in the future? And are those two the same thing?
I would argue that they are different. I believe is trying to argue, but they are in this case related.
There's also reports of them doing the investments in Europe and Ohio and scaling back that. To be honest, I don't think that's going to happen. What the issue with that is the messaging was a bit tweaked. Do you remember when Pat came on board? He got the job, and the first thing he said is, Intel always used to have an empty shell. Right, so that when there's high demand, they can fill it with tools and start going. And that Intel never had an empty shell. Then he announced he's building 3 fabs around the world, not shells. So all those ideas of let's go build a fab may just turn into let's build a shell. Thing is, it's hard to do that in an area that doesn't have the infrastructure for a fab. So Columbus, which is a new site, Magdeburg, Germany, which is a new site, they can't easily be shells. The shell has to be at an already present site. So
Mexico,
Isn't some of that expansion meant to be for packaging though?
Some of it is. And I believe, much earlier in the chat, Patriot said that Intel said the majority of the money for Foundry is going to be packaging, not nodes until 2027, I believe.
Well, as in, none of the stuff that they'd spend it on for Foundry would actually be revenue generating until 27.
No, the majority of the revenue generated will be in the packaging sort of department, not the fabbing of stuff department.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where they expect the initial revenue to be anyway. So let's see if I can share this screen. Window, that one. Okay, so this was just pushed out on the wire as we were speaking. This is continued momentum for 18A. This comes to a little bit what Patriot was saying. So I'll read through this, and hopefully it comes at a size where people can read along and it comes through. So this is from Ben Sell, VP of Tech Development. He works on and Kelleher. I think Ben Sell is also one of the old Microsoft guys' names. But yeah, okay. Since releasing the Intel 18 Process Design Kit PDK 1.0 in July, we have seen a positive response across our ecosystem and are encouraged by what we're seeing from Intel 18A in the fab. It's powered on and booting on operating systems, healthy and yielding well, and we will remain on track for launch in 25. One of the benefits of our early success on Intel 18A is that it enables us to shift engineering resources from 20A earlier than expected as we near completion of our 5 nodes in 4 years plan. With this decision, the Arrow Lake processor family will be built primarily using external partners and packaged by Intel Foundry. The journey to... Those two sentences are a little bit weird together. But anyway.
Okay. What exactly do they... So, with this decision, the Arrow Lake processor family will be built primarily using external partners and packaged by Intel Foundry. So to me, what this sounds like is they're going to be building
20A is getting the boot.
TSMC. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Patriot said that during the Citigroup presentation call that Pat essentially all but said that 20A, 18A is taking over from 20A. So yeah, the journey to Intel 18A has been built on the groundwork laid by 20A. It enabled us to explore and refine new techniques, materials, and transistor architectures that are crucial for advancing Moore's law. So Moore's law isn't dead. With Intel 20A, we successfully integrated both ribbon FET gate-all-around architecture and power via backside power delivery for the first time. And these learnings have directly informed the first commercial implementation of both technologies in 18A. This points to the iterative nature of semiconductor innovation, and we're excited to bring these advancements to all Intel Foundry customers. Focusing resources on 18A also helps us to optimize our engineering investments. When we set out to build 20A, we anticipated lessons learned on 20A yield quality that would be part of the bridge to 18A. But with the current 18A defect density around 0.4, like we said, the economics are right for us to make the transition now. So for me, that kind of sounds like that. So it's important to realize that the way TSMC does process nodes is that they have a high level, like in TSMC 7, and then they do an improvement, and that's TSMC 6. So if you can see 7 as the baseline, the V1.0, then 6 is like the 1.5, right? Then N5 was a new 1.0, and then N4 was the 1.5. Intel's policy was more that Intel 4 and 20A was the 0.5, and then 3 and 18A was the 1.0. Because the difference was going to be that the Foundry nodes, 3 and 18A, they're the superset. They contain all the IP, all the SerDes, all the I/O, whereas the 20A and 4 was just like only the high performance libraries and the high density libraries. Everything else comes, with the other stuff. Yeah, what it sounds like is that 18A is so far ahead of where they expected it to be in yield and all the lessons they're learning that anything that was considered 20A is now coming on 18A. So, yeah, as AnandTech said, Intel 4 was a testbed for 3, just like 20A was a testbed for 18A. So
now, yeah, and I think it's a good sign for 18A. So how the thing that I'm going to sort of caution Intel on, and they know way more than me, of course, but I hope that this is not they're diving in, they're biting too much, they're biting off too much, more than they can chew.
As in, yeah, they're not as long as what happened with 10 doesn't happen again, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, because 20 and 18 are kind of similar, and the PDK for 18A is 1.0 now, right? It's done.
Yeah.
All that's needed now is pipe cleaners to improve yield, optimize the process. The rules on designing a chip on 18A are done. And barring any major defects, why would you even consider 20?
Yeah, no, that's fair.
If there's no time to market difference, and I think that's what they're kind of getting at here, right?
Or the time to market is so small, like the difference is so small that waiting that extra month may be worth it, or is absolutely worth it. So
yeah, for the engineering costs to do it on both would be a bit weird, because I think they've said something like 10% performance per watt between 20 and 18. So there are some slight design rule changes between the two, because it's a pipe cleaner, it's a test bed, it's and Chebri asks, will 18A have enough volume? And it's any facility that they were building for 20 can do 18, just the same way that any time a facility like the the Ireland fab that can do 4 can do 3 as well. They build it to do 3, they start with 4. They build it for 18A, they start to do 20. And the first chips for 18A are coming out of Oregon, because all first chips for a new process node come out of Oregon, because that's their dev fab. But it's so big, it might as well be a production fab. And then when they get the process node right, they do what they call copy exact, where in the new fab, they take exactly the layout of what works in Oregon and just simply copy paste. They don't actually move tools, they buy new tools. And then over time, the stuff in Oregon gets repurposed.
I bring this question to you, right? Hypothetically, if Intel were to split, right, foundry product in the future, of course, do you think that Intel not having older nodes, so like 40 or 28 or even older, or these specialized nodes like high voltage nodes or SIG, right? Do you think that will harm the not TCO, but like the
it will limit their addressable market.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think it will seriously limit their addressable market?
So that's what the acquisition of Tower was meant to bring, right?
Yeah.
The failed acquisition of Tower because of Chinese regulators. Excuse me. To be honest, actually, most of that acquisition, I think, was more for the personnel, more like an acqui-hire, because Tower knows how to deal with 10,000 customers, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what Tower is. But yes, technically, not having legacy, or GlobalFoundries calls them essential nodes, does limit your addressable market. If we look at TSMC's latest financials, TSMC does 12 million wafers a year, right? The revenue is about 50-50, leading edge versus legacy. However, in volume, it's about 1 million, or not even 1 million, versus 11 million. And the legacy is on 11, right? Actually, no, per quarter, it's more like, I was thinking of per quarter numbers. Yeah, okay, so it's more like 2 million and 10 million, right? So 80% of the production happens on half the revenue, and then 20% of the production is the other half of the revenue. Intel's only playing in that 20% region, right? Moving forward. And while they haven't acquired Tower, they have like a memorandum of understanding or an agreement such that if Intel has a customer that needs a legacy node, they will assist them in working with Tower to make it happen.
Yeah, so there's an MOU for that, as well as a build out for one of the fabs that they're building out to host Tower nodes as well. I believe it's their 40 nanometer node. So yeah.
Yeah, it's the radar says TSMC hasn't used 20 in a while. Everything else though, I think it was last quarter, maybe the quarter before, TSMC had record revenue on 90 nanometer. I mean, since 19 nanometer ever existed, they had record revenue.
And that's going to be all the digitization of like cars and all that, right?
It's most RF still uses 350 nanometer technology, right? Because high frequency silicon germanium, is built on 350 nanometer. There is some technical reason, So Will says profit margin will look pretty bad with legacy nodes though. TSMC's profit margin is around the 53%, I want to say.
That sounds 53, 54 sounds right off the top of my head.
Yeah, and okay, of course, that's high end weighted, but and that is lower than Intel's historic margins. The 65 Intel used to be 60 to 65% for years and years and years. Right now, Intel would love 50% margins. So, yeah, it's Rectide. It's to do with some of the high frequency oscillators. Is 350, though it's technically HCI. So the way you measure HCI isn't the same way you measure CMOS, and it's it's all about that. So. So okay, Intel Foundry. That's my take on it. There's no sense to split it. There's no value. Real men have fabs, right? Real men have fabs.
Yeah, but it's.
We also didn't discuss packaging. I mean, you could argue Intel could sell off its packaging division. That has some value because that's where the revenue's going.
But why would you split packaging? To me, splitting packaging and fabrication doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, if you were to split Foundry, you'd split it further from manufacturing versus packaging.
Oh, if you're talking like splitting it within like the sort of business unit itself.
Yeah, and then it can become its own thing. Technically, it could exist in isolation. That's the argument. You still need Foundry customers.
I would argue.
So it'd become an OSAT, what we traditionally call an OSAT.
Yes, but I'm more thinking about the fabrication side, like.
Yeah. Oh no. Sold to the lowest bidder, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's this argument of who's making money betting against Intel and what would. So I keep track of the investor relations traffic, and we got sent an email the other day saying Intel recommends voting against aggressive investors' proposal to do this, that, and the other. Right. So there are aggressive investors. I've also spoken to a few other people who have ideas of where Intel could go that aren't splitting. And it depends, on the value of Intel, what happens, whether, they could do a Michael Dell and go private. Could you imagine?
That would be, well, I know that there was a report earlier today that apparently Intel's status on the Dow is in danger.
Yeah. The question is, if you'd have to find the right investors to invest and, promise them that there won't be any money for at least 3-4 years, maybe, or at least a proper return.
VCs would happily do that.
They gave $44 billion for Twitter. If Intel reaches that market cap, who knows? Or maybe there's a multiplier on top of that. I don't know enough about M&A and stuff.
Yeah,
so it's It's and GTA Gaming here, interesting name. If they split it, would they stay leading edge, or would they do what Mubadala did, or Mubadala did to Global Foundries and say, we're losing money staying at the leading edge, we just need to hunker back. Thing is, you can't hunker back when the only person who can use the nodes that you have access to is the company you just spun out from.
Yeah.
And then you have a wafer agreement, but if they renege on the wafer agreement, you still don't have anyone else to fill those fabs, so you end up cannibalizing your only customer.
Yeah,
or stabbing them in the face.
Yeah.
So Will asks who has the money to purchase Altera even. Part of me wants to say something like a Broadcom or a Marvell.
I think the speculation is Marvell.
How much money did Nvidia just announce in share buybacks last quarter?
20 billion, 25 billion,
50.
Something like that. Oh, it's 50? Jeez.
So, I'm not saying it's changed down the sofa, but I'm saying, yeah, it wouldn't be, Jensen's all about owning the end-to-end chain. Could you imagine if he had major FPGA access for the DGX systems?
Personally, I see that being shot down by regulators. For NVIDIA
but then again, would you say the same thing if it was Broadcom?
Broadcom's a bit more. Maybe not. But no, NVIDIA almost certainly would be, especially with the DOJ now looming over them, because earlier today the DOJ published there was
the stock's down 10. The stock's down 10% today, and the last I saw it was 2% more after hours.
Yeah,
I think it was the biggest single day removal of value from a company ever. 300 billion got taken off of Nvidia's value today.
So,
which I think is
conflicting reports, but supposedly the DOJ subpoenaed Nvidia, but Nvidia is saying that they didn't receive an antitrust subpoena from the DOJ. What's true or what's not?
We didn't have it we didn't get it in the mail. Okay.
Yeah.
So Intel's market cap right now is 83 billion, which is insane. Actually, AMD's up 3% today.
Right. Aren't they at like 200 billion?
228.
228, yeah.
So, yeah, if you add Intel's value and AMD's value together, that's how much Nvidia's value dropped today. They dropped one Intel plus one AMD.
I'm sorry, but I still think Nvidia is completely overvalued. Like, I don't see how the market can sustain that, personally.
2.6 trillion on their revenue numbers. Their revenue is like 120 bill, and they're worth 20x that.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, they're trending to double their revenue this year, financial year. So last year it was 61. They're trending towards 120. So it's the multipliers what it is. I don't know. I'm not enough of a financial guy. I don't actually own any investments. The only investment I have is my pension, and somebody else manages that. I speak to investors. I don't make decisions for them. I just tell them what the hardware does and who's in the lead and where I think it's going. And you guys get 3 hours of it on this stream. Don't worry, the bill will be in the post. I carefully avoid some questions because I know it's stuff that I will do in the consultancy role. So if you ask me proper financial questions, then I may direct you to the book a meeting with me page because you're probably an investor. But it's but yeah, that's IFS in a nutshell. Let's do some Q&A. We're open for Q&A. The Poutine is in, so if you've got any thoughts on what we've spoken about today, and I know a few people have had questions, to repeat them so we can see them.
Yeah.
Let's get this one because OJ002. So he's referencing a presentation from Hot Chips that we kind of breezed over last week because of time.
Yeah.
George, would you like to pronounce?
Oh God, you're making me do this? Okay.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. It's Shanshan. It's a presentation it was a RISC-V core from an academic.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I actually didn't see this talk, and I still haven't caught up on it. So please answer the question.
If you want me to, so I actually thought that was a very good presentation. I think I would not say that they're 4 to 5 years behind ARM. At least not in what they have shown necessarily. I would say that they need to show more. Like there needs to be a proper chip that you can get your hands on and test, right? To really sort of suss out where they are.
And with academic chips, that's sometimes difficult. Academics sometimes use multi-project wafers. That doesn't always guarantee working devices, and so they have to over-engineer them to get it. Yeah. And with academics, one of the issue I find with students is that they'll be under an academic and they'll end up bringing up somebody else's chip that was there 3 years ago, or they'll design something that they'll never see because they left.
So what I would also say is it's interesting that the open source community has a core that looks quite performant, right? Just based off the structure sizes and just what I know. But do I think that this is a serious threat to someone like ARM? No. At least not right now.
The first high performance RISC-V core we're likely to get some semblance of access to is from Tenstar. But that's still at least a year, if not a year and a half away.
Do you class the Sci-5 P670 as high performance? Because technically that should be an SBC now.
That's high performance for RISC-V, but it's not server class, is it?
No, technically the P870D, whenever that's coming, is the server core for Sci-5.
I haven't spoken to them in a while. Maybe I should reach out.
Well, I know that they you have a very rocky relationship with folks there.
We'll see. Next question from Patriot. Opinion on Intel Clearwater Forest on 18A and its market position. It's two things have to go right with Intel. Node, product. I'm more confident than ever that the node is fine. The product, given the way that they've integrated their chiplet strategy on Sierra Forest, means that I'm more hopeful for the generation after on Clearwater. That being said, Intel has to prove that they have a stronghold in that market that was essentially wedged open by Bergamo.
Yeah.
Right? And to be honest, I think we still need to see the results of Bergamo in the market.
Yeah.
It's there. We know it's there.
Yeah. Something that I'm going to harp on until I die, and Ian knows that this is coming, is where are my AVX5 Pro Intel? Where's my E-cores? Especially data center.
They're in the economy bin. Sorry. Old joke at this point.
Yeah.
No, it's so 6700E is out. We'll wait to see 6900E as well. Mr. Vipatis is talking about the CUDA moat here, saying, I don't believe in CUDA supremacy anymore. PyTorch supports Intel soon, AMD too, just fine. I'm actually finding that in the last couple of months, people's opinions on CUDA's moat has shifted drastically.
Yeah.
Because the people who are ready to start generating revenue from machine learning are so close to the metal, CUDA doesn't matter. It's great for development purposes, but for over optimization, it's too high level.
And so. I'm hopeful that certain companies, the two of which we've been talking, one of which we've talked about today a lot, the other one slightly less so, but
you can say names.
AMD and Intel have roadmaps to better support features or ecosystems like CUDA at that sort of low level in the future.
Yeah.
I think that's in the roadmap for both companies, and I think it's rapidly approaching again for both companies.
Also, the new AI chips are noticing that they have to have a high level and a low level language to be effective.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and the high level is supported by PyTorch, TensorFlow, Paddle, whatever. How many grams of salt is optimal per chip?
17.
The only answer there, baked or fried. Bokia asks, is Pat the real deal for Intel?
I don't even know what that question is trying to ask.
So, this is a discussion that has also been happening. Is Pat the right person for Intel, or alternatively, and this is kind of a negative take, if Pat was forced out, right, could anyone replace him and be as effective? To be honest, I think the only way Pat's being forced out is if the board remove him. I don't think the board's at that stage yet.
I don't know. With how bad that financial report was, I could see there being threats.
Diamond hands, right? Hodl Pat to the moon. There is suggestions that Lip Bu leaving Intel's board of directors is because that there's like a new advisory council that he's going to sit on or something. So it's not that it was anti-Intel. It was because what he's going to be doing is changing for Intel. So yeah, they also need somebody who knows Intel from the inside, I think.
Yeah.
Somebody coming from the outside, Intel's too big to know what it's doing in time to be effective with change. Or you get a CFO in who guts it. So yes, is Pat the real deal? Yeah, he has to be. Did Intel talk about the development of AVX 10.1? Nope.
No.
Simple.
Which?
What will regulators do to NVIDIA if they win the antitrust case? How much do you know about this?
So I've been on the periphery. I have been paying a little bit of attention to it, but I know that there hasn't really been many updates. But if hypothetically, if NVIDIA is in fact acting in a monopolistic way, now granted, having 90+% of a market share is not technically valid for breakup. But if they are, say, threatening customers with not getting shipments if they dare buy AMD or Intel or whatever chip, or they're forcing commitments you have to buy Hopper to get Blackwell, or you have to buy Blackwell to get Rubin. Then
it's abusive position. Abusive position.
Yeah.
There is a gray area here. It's called MDF, and I don't mean medium density fiberboard. It's marketing discretionary funds. When partners do co-marketing, sometimes one partner will put in some money to help ease the burden, and that money may be dependent on investment. Intel's known for doing this. For example, if you are a platinum Intel supplier partner, it means you do X amount of revenue per year with Intel, and as a result, you get kickbacks is the wrong word, but you get additional support financially to help deal with the upfront investment required to enable that revenue. And some of that is co-marketing dollars, and sometimes those co-marketing dollars are spent on influencers and press and ads, right? I've done sponsored videos that I've paid for with that sort of money from AMD and Nvidia, so
it's
through one of their clients.
What could the regulators do to Nvidia? They could, in theory, force a split of the company.
What, consumer versus data center versus everything else?
Well, no. In theory, they could break up auto, data center, and client into 3 different parts. But I don't
so what they say is you can't have a DGX business anymore.
Yeah.
Or let's take Mellanox back out.
Yeah, or force open source CUDA, but who knows?
Yeah. Next question, is Lunar Lake iGPU memory bound? We don't know. We haven't tested yet.
No idea.
And we're not going to make any we're not going to make any predictions. Patriot asks, which CPU is the true successor to Lunar Lake? Panther seems to build on Meteor.
I'll answer that.
I'm not gonna.
The true successor to Lunar Lake is Lunar Lake +1.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's roadmap fuzzy. So for the sake of brevity, we won't go down that route. Transitory asks, by your guess, do you think Arrow Lake is in mass production already, and how soon from launch does mass production really start?
It would have to, if they're launching in this year, I would say that they would have had to have already start mass production now, if not a few months ago.
So I did a video on the classifications of Intel processors, because you have what's called ES0, ES1, QS retail, right?
Mm-hmm.
ES0 and ES1 are the engineering samples where stuff may be broken or the frequency isn't dialed in. QS is qualification sample, and usually what you see online that is marked engineering is actually qualification sample. And that is designed to be essentially retail, but it's the most minor of tweaks. And sometimes I've seen QS be changed by 100 megahertz. I think I saw one Xeon where they also took out 2 cores and added 200 megahertz from the retail version. But it's meant to be essentially dialed in. And between QS and retail, it depends on volume, but that usually happens circa 3 months. Or even more so, because the time to get through the fab, right? If you put it on speedy with all the processes needed, 3 months is good. So it's if you're relying on external foundry a lot, you can pay extra to speed it up. But that just means, excuse me, that just means you go, actually nobody knows how TSMC pricing works. You have the pricing, and then you have the order pricing, and then you have the priority pricing, and then you have the bulk order pricing, and yeah, it's like pick a number, pick a color, pick a state of being, pick a state. You have all these different sections and variables. Let's see, are there any more questions? How promising does Lion Cove and Skymont look in terms of performance?
Wait for reviews.
They've given some numbers. We can't verify. I think the key here will be performance per watt. Though the issue there is performance per watt in itself is a interesting metric to obtain the right way. Expect to see a lot of it done the wrong way.
It's a complicated thing to get.
Yeah. A lot of people will be relying on software to be ready to do the measurements. Software is only so accurate, but I hold my hand up. I've used it on 1,000,001 occasions. So you also have to make sure you're also probing the right thing. To get the right package power for Qualcomm, Intel had to do direct instrumentation. And I was told they blew up a fair few in order to get it right, and they're still not maybe 100%. So, but you can do system power, but then you also have the power delivery losses. You have display involved and everything else. So, the only issue I have is that Intel is comparing Skymont against the low power Gracemont in Meteor Lake, and that's where they're getting the plus Crestmont, sorry, and that's where you're getting the 60% improvement. So,
and that's FP, not an integer. And I would argue against using that as your number, but
yeah. Could something like silicon photonics save Intel, or is that too far out / risky? It's
it would be a brick.
Intel. So
it would be a brick in keeping the building, right?
So silicon photonics, one of my clients is a silicon photonics company, and it's actually one of the leading ones for proper ASIC to ASIC and ASIC to DRAM type installations. They're further along than most, and they think they'll be ready. I've actually got a video coming out with them that I filmed last week. That it's probably nearer than you think, but further away than immediate, because you have to design from the beginning with it, and we're still in the process of making sure that it can be manufactured at scale. The technology is fine. We're talking about integrated silicon photonics here, or photonic I/O, or optical I/O, or some people call it co-packaged optics. There's 1,000,001 different things to say there. And Mr. Vipter says, isn't there a RISC-V laptop? There is. It's by Deep Computing, I think.
Yeah. But
it's quite expensive.
Yeah. There's another question from Rectide. AMD, please try to get a gaming revenue stream again, please. Like your revenue didn't exist, console contracts ended, and you're making discrete cards for so long. Navi 48. I don't quite. So they never lost. Like, they've always had a gaming revenue stream, and the console contracts haven't ended. So yeah, I don't quite know what you mean by that. Has it decreased over time? Yes.
No. So consider AMD as a whole company and where they make their money, right? Enterprise, number one. Whether it's CPU or GPU or whatever, enterprise. Then desktop CPU. Then embedded. Then you scroll all the way down and you get to notebook and then discrete GPU.
Although I would argue that for the desktop CPU, it's business. It's not DIY.
So, in terms of where AMD makes the most money, graphics, unless you're doing what Nvidia does with the, you have to have a good Halo to make a lot of money in gaming, and it just isn't the priority right now for any of the companies. Looking back to GTC earlier this year, they said so little about gaming, and then Jensen's response to Computex was, well, if I told, Computex, a consumer trade show, and he spoke about enterprise AI. And when asked, can you say anything about consumer gaming, he turned around and said, I just spent 2 hours on stage. I didn't want to keep you there any longer speaking about consumer stuff. And to which the response in the room, under the breath was, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So, also gaming takes advanced packaging that could be used for AI chips that make more money. And that advanced packaging is in limited supply. So, it's not dead. It's just taking a vacation.
Yeah.
How does Intel count dies? So you've got a complete respin versus a minor metal layer change. They don't use all the letters of the alphabet, and they may not use them in order. By some counts, Sapphire Rapids had seven or 8 spins. By other counting methods, it had 14.
So as far as I know, for Intel, their big data center chips always start at A0, as far as I know. So like their XCC dies are almost always start at A0 and then go.
No, but it depends what they're doing, whether it goes A to B or 0 to 1.
Sure,
A to B is a bigger change. Yes. And the thing is, sometimes you'll see U0, but it's not the 20th spin, right? Sometimes it will go G, H, J, S, U, S, U. And you'd be like, well, where's the V0? Where's the T0? Where's the K0? They don't exist because it's not in that, it's that sort of thing. Some of these questions are a bit abstract, and I realize we've since the start of the show we've been recording for 3.5 hours. I haven't had dinner, and I'm pretty sure most of the stuff around here is closed, and I need to pack up my bags before I leave tomorrow.
And I need lunch.
Yeah.
And I'm so frustrated with my audio setup that I almost threw it out the fucking window. So.
Yeah. So let's cut it there. I know some of you had a good amount of questions, and I think at some point maybe we should open up the Discord to take questions for the Tech Poutine. I know that's what a couple of other, like the Full Nerds does. They don't take questions in chat. They take it from the Discord. So there are many, if you like what you see, there are many ways to help support us. Like and subscribe this channel. Chips and Cheese also has a channel. They've got a second interview up there with the SoC architect of Lunar Lake. That's a fun watch. Go like and subscribe to that channel. It's Chips and Cheese CC, I think it is.
It's just Chips and Cheese. CC is just, that's because of the whole, no, just Chips and Cheese.
Or you can go to chipsandcheese.com. There are links in videos to lots of other stuff that you can help support us. but yeah, we love doing these things. Wish there was more time in a week to do them. It seemed when I started these, I was always worried that it was going to be a week of no news, but we've kind of had 5 weeks now of some big stuff happening. It'll die down soon, and we'll be like...
I don't expect it to die down at least to the next 4 to 6 weeks. I expect sort of news almost every week.
It's going to be...
I think Intel said that
so
they're really...
There probably won't be one next week because I'm on vacation. So be wary of that. It's ex-Soviet country. Let's see what happens.
Hey, maybe we'll have better internet in their hotels.
yeah, they probably would. But the thing is, I'll be like even further away in time zone to you. So, So it's great seeing you all again. Thank you for joining. This has been the Tech Poutine. I'm Potato.
And I'm Cheese.
And we will see you in the next episode. Thank you for coming.
Why?